Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I work as a marine biologist under contract with UC Santa Cruz. Most of my work takes place in tidal pools and kelp beds along the mid-coast. I record water temperatures, monitor sea otter populations, and collect tissue samples from stranded mammals when called upon by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's a quiet job. You spend hours on the rocks, your boots wet, and your notebooks filled with numbers that matter to about 10 people in the world. I love my job. The ocean lives on its own time and doesn't care about your thoughts. I'm Ryan Ortega. I grew up in Watsonville and learned to read currents before I learned algebra. The area between Natural Bridges and Davenport is etched into my mind like a trail map. I know where the harbor seals come up in March, which reefs have abalone, and which beaches lose sand every winter. I thought I knew that coastline as well as I know my own home. I was wrong. October of last year changed how I see the water. It changed how I work at night. And it changed what I'm willing to say out loud about things I can't explain. This isn't a research paper. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm writing it down because carrying it alone stopped working about 6 months ago. If you've spent time on the coast between Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay, and you've seen lights that don't belong to boats or planes or anything that makes sense, you'll understand why I'm putting this here. Lila Monroe was my field partner that fall. She's a graduate student finishing her thesis on nearshore turbidity and nutrient cycling. Sharp, careful, the kind of person who triple checks her data logs and never loses gear. We'd worked together on a handful of surveys and had a rhythm going. No wasted words. We split the work clean and stayed out of each other's way when we needed to think. That's rare in field science. Most people talk too much or not enough. Lila understood silence. We were running a 2-week survey along the San Mateo County line down through northern Santa Cruz County. The goal was simple. Document changes in invertebrate density at 12 fixed sites between Año Nuevo and Wilder Ranch. It's baseline stuff. You go to the same rocks at the same tidal windows, count what's there, photograph it, log it, and move on. We'd done 9 sites without a single problem. Clean data, good weather, no equipment failures. Site 10 was scheduled for October 22nd at Bonnie Doon Beach, a small crescent of sand tucked under sandstone cliffs about 8 miles north of Santa Cruz. It's not heavily trafficked. The access trail is steep and loose. Most people drive past it without noticing the trailhead marker. That's part of why we picked it. Fewer footprints mean cleaner baseline conditions. We parked at the pullout just before sunset. The marine layer was sitting offshore like a low gray wall, but the sky overhead was still blue and sharp. I could see the Channel Islands faint on the southern horizon. The air had that October bite, cold enough to make your fingers stiff if you didn't keep moving. We geared up at the truck. Waders, sample kits, headlamps, a small cooler for specimens, notebooks in waterproof sleeves, and a handheld GPS unit for logging coordinates. Lila grabbed the DSLR. I took the calipers and the refractometer. We'd be working the low tide window from 9 p.m. to midnight. The forecast called for calm seas and clear skies. Perfect conditions. The trail down was narrow and switchbacked through coastal scrub, coyote brush, sticky monkey flower, and patches of ice plant that glowed faint purple in the dimming light. The ocean sound grew as we dropped elevation. That constant low rumble you get when swells hit a rock shelf. By the time we reached the sand, the sun was gone, and the first stars were starting to punch through. The beach curved in a tight arc, maybe 200 yards across. Cliffs rose on both sides. At the north end, a cluster of sea stacks stood black against the darkening water. That's where our transect line started. We set our packs above the high tide rack line and pulled on our waders. The sand was damp and cold. I could feel it through the neoprene booties. Lila switched on her headlamp and checked the tide chart one more time. We had 2 hours before the water turned. That gave us a clean window to work the rocks without getting soaked. She nodded, and we moved. The rocks at Bonnie Dune form a series of stepped shelves that run parallel to the shore. At low tide, they're exposed and covered in mussels, barnacles, anemones, and the occasional ochre star. We worked methodically. I set the quadrat frames. Lila photographed and counted. Every 15 minutes I logged a GPS point and noted the time. The work had a rhythm to it. Crouch, count, photograph, move. Crouch, count, photograph, move. The beam from my headlamp swept across wet stone and tidal pools filled with small, darting shapes. Hermit crabs, shore crabs, a few juvenile rockfish holding in the shadows. Around 9:45, I noticed the wind had stopped. Not died down. Stopped. The air went flat in a way that made me pause mid-step. The swells kept rolling in, but there was no breeze coming off them. No salt smell moving through the air. Just stillness. I looked up. Lila had stopped too. She was standing at the edge of a tidal pool with her camera hanging at her side, staring out at the water. "You feel that?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Wind's gone." "It's not just the wind," she said. "Listen." I did. And that's when I realized the ocean had gone quiet. The waves were still there. I could see them rolling in white lines against the dark, but the sound had dulled, not muffled like when you plug your ears, just softer. Like someone had turned the volume down on the entire beach. The crash and hiss of water on rocks felt distant, even though it was happening 10 feet away. Then I saw the lights, 3 of them, hovering low over the water about a quarter-mile offshore. They weren't moving. They weren't blinking. They just sat there in a perfect horizontal line, each one the same size and brightness. The color was wrong for navigation lights. Too white, too steady. No red, no green. Just 3 clean points of light hanging in the air like someone had nailed them to the sky. "Ryan," Lila said. Her voice was tight. "What is that?" I didn't answer right away. I was running through options in my head. Boats don't sit that still in open water. Helicopters make noise. Drones buzz. These were silent. I pulled out my phone to check for a signal. No bars. That wasn't unusual. The cliffs block most cell coverage. But the timestamp on the screen had frozen. It still read 9:47, even though I could feel time passing. "Maybe fishing boats," I said. I didn't believe it. Neither did she. "At anchor?" she asked. "In a line like that?" I lowered my phone and watched the lights. They didn't drift. They didn't sway. The swells rolled beneath them and they held position like they were locked to invisible posts. I estimated the height, maybe 30 feet above the water line. Low enough to catch spray if a big set came through. But no spray came. The ocean stayed glassy and gray under them. We stood there for maybe 2 minutes. My legs started to ache from standing still on uneven rock. I shifted my weight and that's when the middle light moved. It slid upward in a smooth vertical climb. No arc, no tilt, just straight up like it was on a track. It rose maybe 50 feet and stopped. The other 2 lights stayed exactly where they were. Lila grabbed my sleeve. "Ryan, we should go." "Let me get a photo first," I said. "No, we're leaving now." Her tone didn't leave room for argument. I've known Lila long enough to trust her instincts. If she says move, you move. I capped the refractometer and shoved it in my pack. She was already pulling her waders down and kicking free of them. I did the same. We left the quadrat frames on the rocks. We left the sample cooler. We grabbed our packs and started back across the sand toward the trail. That's when the sound came back. Not gradually, all at once. The ocean roared like someone had yanked open a door. The air filled with the crash and hiss of surf. And underneath it, I heard something else. A low tone, deep and even. It wasn't coming from the water. It was coming from everywhere. I felt it in my chest more than I heard it, like standing too close to a subwoofer. I looked back. The 3 lights had dropped to the surface. They weren't hovering anymore. They sat on the water, and where they touched, the water glowed. Not reflected light, the water itself was glowing, a pale, greenish-white that spread in circles around each light like oil on puddles. The glow didn't ripple. It didn't break apart when the swells moved through it. It just sat there, bright and wrong. "Don't stop," Lila said. She was 10 feet ahead of me, already at the base of the trail. I turned and followed. My boots slipped on loose sand. I caught myself with one hand and kept moving. The tone climbed in pitch. My teeth started to ache. The air tasted metallic, like licking a battery. We hit the trail and climbed hard. The path was steep and narrow. My thighs burned. My lungs burned. I didn't look back again until we cleared the first switchback. When I did, I saw the glow had spread. It covered the water in front of the beach in a wide band. The 3 lights were gone. Just the glow remained. And it was getting brighter. At the second switchback, Lila stopped and leaned against the cliff face. She was breathing hard. Her face was pale even in the dim light from my headlamp. I stopped beside her and turned to look down at the beach one more time. The glow had reached the sand. It crawled up the beach in a line, slow and deliberate. Where it touched, the sand turned dark. Not wet, dark, like it was pulling the color out of it. The rack line, the driftwood, the kelp, everything the light touched went black, and the tone kept rising. "We need to move," I said. She nodded and pushed off the cliff. We climbed the rest of the trail without stopping. By the time we reached the truck, my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the lock. Lila took them from me and opened the door. We threw our packs in the bed and climbed in. I started the engine and pulled onto the highway without checking for traffic. There wasn't any. The road was empty. No headlights, no taillights, just the yellow line pulling us south toward Santa Cruz. We didn't talk for the first 5 miles. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional rattle from the gear in the back. I kept checking the rearview mirror. The road behind us stayed dark. Lila finally spoke. "Did you see how it moved?" "The light?" I asked. "The glow. On the sand. It wasn't random." "What do you mean?" "It moved in a straight line, like it was following something." I thought about that. She was right. The glow hadn't spread in all directions. It had crawled up the beach in a deliberate path. Targeted. I didn't want to think about what that meant. "We need to file a report," she said. "With who?" I asked. "Coast Guard? Fish and Wildlife? And say what? We saw lights over the ocean that made the water glow?" "We saw something," she said, "and it wasn't normal." "I know," I said, "but I don't know what to call it." We drove back to campus in silence. I dropped Lila at her car in the Marine Sciences lot. She grabbed her pack and stood there for a moment with the door open. The dome light made her face look older than it should. "We're not going back there," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said, "we're not." She nodded and closed the door. I watched her walk to her car and get in. Her taillights flared and she pulled out onto Bay Street. I sat in the truck for another 10 minutes with the engine running and the heat on full. My hands had stopped shaking, but my chest still felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath for an hour. I drove home to my apartment in Capitola and parked in the driveway. The porch light was on. My neighbor's dog barked once from behind a fence and went quiet. Everything looked normal, familiar. But when I stepped out of the truck and looked up at the sky, I felt it again. That metallic taste, that low tone sitting just below the threshold of hearing. I went inside and locked the door. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the couch in the dark and stared at the ceiling until my eyes adjusted. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the 41st Avenue. Normal sounds, safe sounds. But every time the fridge compressor kicked on, my heart rate spiked. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch and watched the window, waiting for a glow that never came. The next morning felt wrong from the start. I woke up on the couch with my boots still on and my phone dead in my pocket. The sun was too bright through the window, the kind of bright that makes your eyes water. I plugged in my phone and waited for it to power on. When it did, the timestamp showed 6:47 a.m. The last logged time from the night before was still frozen at 9:47 p.m. 8 hours and 15 minutes had passed, but my phone had stopped counting somewhere in that window. I scrolled through my photos. Nothing. I knew I hadn't taken any pictures at the beach, but part of me hoped the camera had auto-captured something. A glitch, a light streak, anything. The gallery was empty, except for tide pool shots from earlier sights. I checked Lila's number and called. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen counter drinking it black. My hands were steady. That was something. But my chest still felt compressed like I was breathing thin air. I tried to logic my way through what we'd seen. Bioluminescence doesn't glow that bright or that uniform. Military flares don't hover. Drones don't silence the ocean. Nothing in my training or experience gave me a frame I could hang this on. My phone buzzed. Text from Lila. "Can you meet at the lab? Need to talk. Don't call." I drove to campus and parked in the back lot near the Marine Sciences building. The campus was quiet. It was Saturday. Most of the grad students sleep in on weekends or head out for fieldwork early. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor and found Lila in the specimen room. She was standing at one of the stainless steel tables with a laptop open and a stack of printouts spread out in front of her. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes were red. Not like she'd been crying, like she hadn't slept. "You see this?" she asked. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a NOAA buoy data log. Station 46042, Monterey Bay. The graph showed wave height, water temperature, and atmospheric pressure over a 48-hour window. At 9:47 p.m. on October 22nd, all 3 readings flatlined for exactly 11 minutes. Not zeroed out. Flatlined. The sensors kept logging, but the data went completely smooth. No variation, no peaks, no troughs. Just flat lines. "Equipment failure," I said. "That's what I thought," Lila said. So I checked the other buoys. She pulled up another window. Station 46012 off Half Moon Bay. Same thing. Flatline from 9:47 to 9:58 p.m. She clicked through 4 more stations. All of them showed the same pattern. 11 minutes of dead flat data starting at 9:47. "That's not a coincidence," she said. "Could be a system glitch," I said. "An OAA's network could have dropped." "I called them," she said. 2 hours ago. The text said the buoys were functioning normally. No outages, no maintenance windows. They're reviewing the data now, but they don't have an explanation. I sat down in one of the lab chairs and stared at the printouts. The graphs all looked wrong. Too clean, too synchronized. Like someone had paused the ocean for 11 minutes and then hit play again. "There's more," Lila said. She handed me another printout. This one was a Coast Guard incident log pulled from a public records request she'd filed months ago for unrelated research. The log showed a search and rescue call-out from October 15th. A fishing boat reported engine failure and navigation blackout approximately 10 miles northwest of Santa Cruz. The timestamp was 10:12 p.m. The boat drifted for 20 minutes before power returned. No mechanical cause was found. The entry was flagged as unexplained electrical. "That's a week before we were there," I said. "Read the location," Lila said. I looked at the coordinates. 37 Dgin, 122.1847 dGBW. I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS app. I punched in the numbers. The pin dropped just offshore from Bonnie Doon Beach, less than half a mile from where we'd been standing. My mouth went dry. "There's 3 more," Lila said. She spread out additional incident logs. September 28th, October 3rd, October 19th, all within a 2-mile radius of the same spot. All reporting electrical failure, navigation blackout, or unexplained light phenomena. One entry included a witness statement from a commercial fisherman who described 3 bright points in formation, no sound, moved against wind direction. "This has been happening for a month," I said. "At least," Lila said. "I stopped looking after I found these. I don't know if I want to find more." We sat there in the specimen room with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the smell of formaldehyde faint in the air. Outside the window, I could see the bay, flat and blue, normal. But I kept thinking about those 11 minutes of flatline data, about the way the ocean had gone quiet, about the glow crawling up the sand. "We should tell someone," I said. "Who?" Lila asked. "Coast Guard already has the reports. NOAA has the buoy data. Nobody's connecting it." "Because it sounds crazy," I said. "It is crazy," she said. "But it happened." I stood and walked to the window. A couple of kayakers were paddling near the pier, tourists on the wharf, a sailboat tacking north toward Capitola. Everything looked safe and ordinary. I wanted to believe it was. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Lila closed the laptop. "I want to finish the survey. We have 3 sites left. None of them are near Bonnie Doon. We log the data, submit the report, and we're done. Then I'm taking a semester off. Maybe longer." "You're leaving the program." "I don't know yet," she said, "but I know I'm not going back to that beach." We agreed to meet the following Tuesday to finish the remaining sites. All 3 were south of Santa Cruz near Capitola and Rio del Mar. Easier access. More people around. Safer. We didn't say that last part out loud, but we both knew it. I spent the rest of the weekend at my apartment. I tried to work on data entry and couldn't focus. I tried to read and gave up after 2 pages. Mostly, I sat on the couch and watched the window. At night, I kept the lights off and the blinds cracked. I don't know what I was looking for. I just knew I needed to see the sky. On Sunday night, my neighbor knocked on my door. Her name is Claire. She's in her 60s, retired, keeps a garden in the side yard. We don't talk much beyond hellos and weather comments. She was holding a casserole dish covered in foil. "I made too much," she said. "Thought you might want some." "Thanks," I said. I took the dish. It was still warm. She looked past me into the apartment. "You okay, Ryan? You look like you haven't been sleeping." "I'm fine," I said. "Just a lot of work." "You sure? Because I heard you pacing last night. Around 2 a.m. sounded like you were moving furniture." I hadn't been moving furniture. I'd been standing at the window watching the street, but I didn't tell her that. "Sorry if I woke you," I said. "You didn't wake me," she said. "I was already up. Strange night. Dogs in the neighborhood wouldn't stop barking, all at once, like they were spooked by something." I felt my chest tighten. "What time was that?" "Around 1:30, maybe 2. Went on for about 10 minutes and then just stopped. Dead quiet after that." "Did you see anything?" I asked. She gave me a look. "Like what?" "I don't know. Cars, people, anything unusual." "No," she said. "Just heard the dogs. Why?" "No reason," I said. "Thanks for the food." She nodded and left. I closed the door and set the casserole on the counter. I didn't eat it. I went back to the window and looked out at the street. The streetlights were on. The parked cars sat exactly where they'd been for the last 2 days. Everything looked normal. But I kept thinking about the dogs, about the timing, about the way the ocean had gone silent before the lights appeared. I pulled up a map on my phone and calculated the distance from Bonnie Doon Beach to my apartment in Capitola. 8.3 miles. Straight line, less than 10 miles as the crow flies, or as something else flies. Tuesday came. Lila and I met at the Marine Sciences building and loaded the truck. We didn't talk about the weekend. We didn't talk about the data logs or the incident reports. We just loaded gear and checked equipment like we always did. Professional, clean, focused on the work. We hit the first site at Rio Del Mar just after 10 a.m. The tide was dropping. The sun was bright. There were families on the beach and a couple of surfers in the water. Normal coastal scene. We worked the rocks for 2 hours and logged everything without issue. The data looked clean. The counts were consistent with previous years. By noon, we were done. Site 12 was at a small access point near New Brighton State Beach. We parked in the day use lot and carried our gear down a wooden staircase to the sand. There were maybe a dozen people scattered along the beach. Dog walkers, a couple reading under an umbrella, a kid building a sandcastle near the waterline. We set up near a cluster of rocks at the south end and started working. Around 1 p.m. I noticed the wind had stopped again. Same dead calm. Same flatness in the air. I looked at Lila. She'd noticed too. She was standing with the camera in her hands, staring out at the water. "Ryan," she said. I followed her gaze. 300 yards offshore, the surface of the water had gone smooth. Not calm. Smooth. Like glass. A perfect circle, maybe 50 feet across. The swells rolled up to the edge of it and stopped. They didn't break. They didn't ripple through. They just stopped. The people on the beach had noticed. The dog walkers had stopped walking. The couple under the umbrella was standing now. The kid with the sandcastle was pointing. "We're leaving," Lila said. "Yeah," I said. We packed fast. No careful coiling of ropes, no organized stacking. We threw everything in the bags and moved. By the time we reached the stairs, the smooth patch had grown. It was 100 feet across now, maybe more. And in the center of it, something was rising. Not breaking the surface, rising through it, like the water was opening. A dark shape, narrow, vertical, taller than a person. It didn't splash, it didn't disturb the glass-smooth water around it. It just stood there. Silent. Someone on the beach screamed. Not loud. A short, startled sound. That broke the spell. People started moving. The dog walkers pulled their dogs back from the water. The couple grabbed their umbrella and ran toward the stairs. The kid's mom scooped him up and carried him. Lila and I hit the parking lot at a run. We threw the gear in the bed and got in the truck. I started the engine and pulled out onto Park Avenue without looking. A car honked. I didn't care. I drove south toward Seacliff and didn't stop until we were past Aptos. We pulled into a gas station and sat in the truck with the engine running. Neither of us spoke for a long time. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck. Lila had her phone out. She was scrolling through something. "There's a post already," she said, "on the community Facebook page. Someone at New Brighton saw it too. They're calling it a whale." "That wasn't a whale," I said. "I know," she said, "but that's what they're calling it." I looked at her. "What do we do?" She put her phone down and stared straight ahead through the windshield. "We submit the data we have. We write the report. We don't mention what we saw, and we're done." "That's it?" "What else is there?" she asked. "We file a report saying we saw an unidentified object rise out of the ocean in broad daylight in front of witnesses. Then what? We get pulled into meetings, we get questioned. Our data gets flagged. Our credibility gets shredded. And nothing changes because nobody knows what it is." She was right. I hated that she was right. But she was. We drove back to campus. We unloaded the gear. We logged the data from sites 11 and 12. We wrote the report and submitted it to the project coordinator. Clean, professional, complete. We didn't mention the smooth patch. We didn't mention the shape. We didn't mention the wind dying or the way the water had opened like a door. That was 3 weeks ago. The project coordinator accepted the report without questions. Lila took a leave of absence from the program. She told her advisor she needed time to reevaluate her research direction. She moved back to Sacramento to stay with her parents for a while. We still text sometimes. Short messages, "How are you?" "I'm fine. You okay?" "Yeah, I'm still working. Still running surveys. But I don't take night shifts anymore. I don't work alone, and I don't go north of Santa Cruz." When people ask why, I tell them the sites are covered by other teams. That's not true, but it's easier than the truth. The truth is I'm afraid of the water now. Not all water. Just the ocean. Specifically, that stretch of coast between Año Nuevo and Santa Cruz. The part I used to know better than anywhere else. The part that used to feel like home. I still live in Capitola. I still see the bay from my kitchen window. But I don't go down to the beach anymore. When I drive past on Park Avenue, I keep my eyes on the road. If I catch a glimpse of the water and it looks too smooth, I turn at the next street and take a different route. The first physical change I noticed was in my hands. About a week after New Brighton, I was making coffee and dropped the pot. It slipped right through my fingers like I'd forgotten how to grip. The pot shattered on the tile. I cleaned it up and told myself I was tired. But it kept happening. Small things. I'd reach for a door handle and my hand would shake. I'd try to write in my field notebook and the pen would drift off the line. I went to a clinic in Santa Cruz. The doctor ran basic tests, checked my reflexes, had me touch my nose with my eyes closed, asked about stress, sleep, alcohol consumption. Everything came back normal. She said it was probably anxiety and suggested I talk to someone. I thanked her and left. The dreams started around the same time, not every night. Just often enough that I started dreading sleep. They were always the same. I'm standing on Bonnie Doon Beach. The tide is out. The sand is dark and wet. I'm alone. No Lila, no gear. Just me and the ocean. And the ocean is wrong. It's too flat, too smooth. Like black glass stretching to the horizon. In the dream, I walk toward the water. I don't want to. My legs move without permission. The sand under my boots is warm. Not sun warm. Warm like fever. When I reach the waterline, I stop. And the lights rise out of the ocean. 3 of them. Close. So close I can see they're not lights at all. They're openings, tears in something. And through the tears I can see movement. Shapes that don't have names. I always wake up before they reach me. but the feeling stays. That metallic taste, that pressure in my chest. It follows me into the shower, into breakfast, into my truck on the way to work. I stopped telling people I was fine. I started saying I was busy when friends asked to meet up. I stopped answering my mom's calls. She left voicemails. "Ryan, just checking in. Call me when you can." I listened to them. I didn't call back. In November, I got reassigned to a kelp forest monitoring project based out of Moss Landing. It was a good project. Good team. We'd motor out to the study site in a small research vessel, drop anchor, and spend the day doing visual transects underwater. The work was methodical and clean. Visibility was good. The kelp beds were healthy. I should have been content. But every time I dropped below the surface and saw the light filtering down through the canopy, I thought about the glow, about the way it had crawled up the sand, about the way the water had opened at New Brighton. One morning in late November, we were anchored about a mile offshore from Moss Landing Harbor. The sea was flat. Fog sat on the water in patches. I was suiting up for a dive when our captain, a guy named Marcus, pointed east toward the harbor mouth. "You see that?" he asked. I looked. There was a fishing boat idling just inside the breakwater. Nothing unusual about that. Boats idle there all the time, waiting for clearance or checking gear. But Marcus was pointing past the boat. At the water, a smooth patch, perfectly circular, maybe 30 feet across. The swells rolled up to it and stopped. The fog avoided it, and in the center the water had a faint glow. Not bright, just a pale greenish tint that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. "Algae bloom?" one of the other divers asked. "Wrong time of year," Marcus said. He picked up his radio and switched to channel 16. "Moss Landing Harbor Patrol. This is research vessel Calypso. We're observing an unusual surface phenomenon approximately 1 mile west of the harbor mouth. Can you advise?" Static, then a voice. "Calypso, this is Harbor Patrol. Can you describe the phenomenon?" Marcus described it. The smooth patch, the glow, the way the swells avoided it. There was a pause on the other end. "Calypso, we'll send a unit to investigate. Maintain your position and keep us advised if it changes." We waited. The smooth patch didn't move. It didn't grow. It just sat there. After 10 minutes, a harbor patrol boat motored out from the jetty and approached the patch. They circled it once, twice. Then they stopped, and one of the officers leaned over the side with what looked like a temperature probe. Marcus kept the radio on. We heard the officer's voice. "Harbor Patrol to Calypso. We're reading normal water temperature and salinity. No debris, no visible biological source. We'll file a report and monitor." The harbor patrol boat pulled back and returned to the harbor. The smooth patch stayed for another 20 minutes. Then it faded. Not all at once. Gradually. Like someone was turning down a dimmer switch. The glow went first. Then the smooth surface broke apart and the swells rolled through like nothing had been there. We completed the dive. I went through the motions, checked the transect line, counted kelp stipes, photographed urchins and sea stars. But my mind wasn't on the work. I kept thinking about the patch, about the way it had appeared and disappeared without cause, about the fact that it was happening in daylight now, in front of witnesses, and nobody had an explanation. After the dive, Marcus pulled me aside. "You've been working this coast longer than most of us. You ever seen anything like that before?" I almost told him. Almost said yes. I've seen it. I've been close to it. I know what it does. But I looked at his face and saw the question was casual. Just curiosity. If I gave him the real answer, it would stop being casual. It would become a thing we had to deal with. Reports, meetings, speculation. I wasn't ready for that. "No," I said. "First time." He nodded and let it drop. That night, I drove home and sat in my apartment with the lights off. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Not scientific databases, just the internet. Forums, local news, social media. I used terms like unexplained lights Monterey Bay and strange ocean phenomena Santa Cruz. I found more than I wanted to. A fishing charter captain in Monterey reported seeing 3 bright objects hovering over the water in September. He filed a report with the Coast Guard. No follow-up. A surfer in Capitola posted a video on Instagram showing a weird glow in the water near the pier in early October. The comments were full of people saying it was bioluminescence or a hoax. The surfer insisted it wasn't. The video was shaky and low resolution, but I could see the glow. It looked familiar. A couple camping at Manresa State Beach reported their car battery dying overnight in mid-October. When they got a jump the next morning, their dashboard clock was reset, and their phone GPS couldn't find a signal for an hour. They wrote it off as a dead battery and bad cell coverage. A lighthouse keeper at Pigeon Point logged an unusual light pattern offshore on October 20th. 3 steady white lights in horizontal formation. No navigation markers. No sound. Observed for approximately 15 minutes before disappearing. The log was part of a public record I found through a Freedom of Information request database. The pattern was clear. It had been happening for months, maybe longer, and it was escalating. More sightings, more frequency, more daylight encounters, but nobody was connecting the dots because each incident looked isolated when you only saw one piece. I made a spreadsheet, date, location, witness. Description, I plotted the incidents on a map. They formed a line, a rough arc following the coastline from Half Moon Bay down to Point Lobos, and the center of the arc was Bonnie Doon Beach. I called Lila. It was late, almost midnight. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Ryan? Are you watching the news?" I asked. "No, why?" "Check the local channels. Santa Cruz." I heard rustling, a pause, then her voice again. "What am I looking for?" "Anything about lights. Ocean. Monterey Bay." Another pause. "There's nothing. What's going on?" I told her about the smooth patch at Moss Landing, about the Harbor Patrol investigation, about the spreadsheet and the map and the pattern I'd found. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Ryan, you need to stop." "Stop what?" "Looking for this, researching it. You're making it worse." "How is knowing what's happening making it worse?" "Because you can't do anything about it," she said. "Nobody can, and the more you dig, the more you're going to find. And it's going to eat you up." "It's already eating me up," I said. "Then let it go. File it away. Move on, that's what I'm doing." "Are you?" I asked. "Really?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. "I'm trying." We talked for a few more minutes. She told me she was seeing a therapist, that it was helping, that she was thinking about switching fields, maybe forestry, maybe something that didn't involve the ocean. I told her I understood. I didn't tell her I couldn't do that. The ocean was all I knew. December came. The research vessel project wrapped up for the season. I took a short-term contract doing water quality sampling for a coastal development impact study. It was indoor work mostly. Lab analysis. Data entry. I didn't have to go near the water. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. I felt like I was running away from something I didn't understand. And the not understanding made it worse. On December 18th, I broke my own rule. I drove north on Highway 1, past Santa Cruz, past Davenport. I pulled into the parking area at Bonnie Doon Beach just before sunset. The lot was empty. The trail looked the same, narrow, steep. overgrown with coastal scrub. I didn't go down. I just sat in my truck and looked at the trailhead. I told myself I was checking, making sure it was still just a beach. Just rocks and sand and water. Normal. Safe. Nothing to be afraid of. The sun dropped. The sky went from blue to orange to purple. I kept waiting for the lights to appear. They didn't. The ocean stayed dark. The swells rolled in steady and even. I heard them through the cracked window, that low, constant rumble. The sound I'd grown up with. The sound I used to find comforting. As the last light faded, I saw something on the sand, a faint glow near the waterline. Pale. Greenish. It pulsed once, twice, then went out. I started the truck and left. I didn't go back. It's January now. I'm writing this from a coffee shop in Salinas. I moved here 2 weeks ago. Found a small place near the rodeo grounds. It's inland. No ocean views, no salt air, no tide schedules. I took a job with an agricultural water testing company. We sample irrigation runoff and test soil chemistry. It's not what I trained for, but it's work. And it's far enough from the coast that I can sleep without dreaming about smooth water and glowing sand. Lila texts me sometimes. She's in Oregon now, working for the Forest Service. She says the trees are tall and the air is clean, and she doesn't think about the ocean anymore. I'm happy for her. I don't tell her I still check the NOAA buoy data every morning. I don't tell her about the spreadsheet I still keep. I don't tell her that the incidents haven't stopped. If anything, they've increased. There was another harbor patrol report last week. Unexplained electrical failure on 3 boats simultaneously, all of them within a mile of each other. All of them north of Santa Cruz. The pattern holds. I don't know what's happening off that coast. I don't know if it's been happening for years or if it started recently. I don't know if it's natural or unnatural or something in between that we don't have words for yet. What I know is this: the ocean between Half Moon Bay and Monterey is not behaving the way it should. The lights are real. The smooth patches are real. The electrical failures are real. The way the water glows and opens and moves with intention, all of it is real. And the people who've seen it know it's real, even if they can't prove it. I'm not going back to find proof. I'm not going back at all. I traded the coast for the valley. I traded kelp forests for lettuce fields. I traded the sound of waves for the sound of tractors. It's a fair trade. Because I'm still here. I'm still working. I'm still functional. And that's more than I can say for some of the others. There's a commercial fisherman in Monterey who won't leave the harbor after dark anymore. His crew says he saw something in October that changed him. He won't say what. Just that he's done with night runs. There's a Coast Guard officer who requested a transfer to San Diego after a rescue call near Davenport in November. The details of that call are classified. But I know the date. November 12th. And I know it shows up on my spreadsheet. There's a lighthouse keeper at Pigeon Point who retired early. He'd been there for 20 years. He left in December without explanation. His replacement lasted 3 weeks and quit. The position is vacant now. We're all leaving in our own ways. And none of us are talking about why. If you work the Central California coast, you'll hear stories. Strange lights, dead zones, equipment failures, smooth patches. Most people will tell you it's environmental. Algae blooms, unusual currents, magnetic anomalies. They'll give you scientific-sounding reasons because that's what we do. We make sense of things. We categorize. We label. We file. But if you work that coast long enough, and you're out there at the right time, you'll see something that doesn't fit the categories. And when you do, you'll have a choice. You can report it and watch it get filed away as unexplained. You can ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. Or you can do what I did. You can leave. I chose to leave. I'm not ashamed of that. Survival is a valid response. And right now, staying away from that water feels like survival. I still love the ocean. I still respect it. I'm just not sure I trust it anymore. Not that stretch of it. Not after what I saw. Not after the lights and the silence and the way the water opened like it was making room for something to come through. Lila asked me once if I thought we were in danger. If whatever we saw could follow us. I told her no. I told her it seemed tied to a specific location, a specific stretch of coast. As long as we stayed away, we'd be fine. I hope I was right. But sometimes at night, when the wind picks up and I hear a low tone in the distance, just the sound of traffic on 101 or a semi-downshifting on the grade, I hold my breath. I listen. I wait for the metallic taste, for the pressure in my chest, for the feeling that something is watching. It hasn't come yet. Maybe it never will. Maybe Bonnie Doon Beach is the only place it exists. Maybe whatever is out there stays in the water and doesn't follow people inland. Maybe. I keep my apartment lights on at night now. All of them. The electric bill is higher than it should be. I don't care. The light helps. It reminds me I'm not standing on a dark beach with 3 points of light hovering over the water. I'm here, inland, safe. I tell myself that every night. Most nights, I believe it. This is my account. This is what I saw. This is why I left. If you've seen the same lights, the same smooth water, the same glow creeping up the sand, you already know why I'm not going back. If you haven't seen it yet, I hope you never do. But if you're working that coast, and the wind dies for no reason and the ocean goes quiet in a way that makes your chest tighten, trust that feeling. Pack your gear. Leave the beach. Don't wait to see what happens next. I waited. I saw. And I'm still trying to forget. The ocean keeps its secrets. I'm fine with that. I don't need to know what's out there anymore. I just need to stay away from it. That's the end of my story. I'm not writing this to warn people or to prove anything. I'm writing it because carrying it alone stopped working. Now it's written, now it's out there. And maybe that's enough. I'm done with the coast. I'm done with the lights. I'm done looking over my shoulder waiting for a glow that might never come. I'm done, and I'm okay with being done. My name is Jason Kimball. I'm a freelance photographer based out of Venice Beach. Most of my work is commercial. Product shots, real estate. The occasional headshot session for actors who still think LA is going to make them famous. It pays the rent, it keeps my gear current, and it gives me enough freedom to take the jobs I actually care about. Coastal landscapes. Marine wildlife. The kind of photography that doesn't sell well, but it reminds me why I picked up a camera in the first place. I met Sienna Cruz at a gallery opening in Culver City 3 years ago. She had a series of ocean paintings on display. Big canvases, bold colors, the kind of work that makes you feel the salt spray even though you're standing in a climate-controlled room drinking cheap wine. We got to talking. Turned out she lived on a sailboat in Marina del Rey and spent most of her time between the Channel Islands and the Malibu coast. She offered to take me out sometime if I wanted to shoot from the water. I took her up on it. We became friends. The kind of friends who don't need to fill silence with conversation. She'd sail, I'd shoot. Sometimes we'd anchor in a quiet cove and she'd paint while I adjusted exposures and watched the light change. It was easy, comfortable. No expectations beyond showing up and doing the work we both loved. On November 8th of last year, Sienna called me around noon. She was planning to motor out past Point Doom that evening to catch the moonrise over the Pacific. Clear skies forecasted, calm seas. She asked if I wanted to come along and shoot some long exposures. I said yes. I always said yes. The ocean at night is a different animal than the ocean during the day. The light is softer, the colors are strange, and if you're patient, You can capture things most people never see. We met at the marina around 4 p.m. Her boat is a 32-foot sloop, nothing fancy. She bought it used and has been fixing it up piece by piece. The hull is white with a blue waterline stripe. The name painted on the stern is Wandering. I've never asked her why she chose that name. It seemed to fit. We loaded my gear into the cabin. 2 camera bodies, a tripod, a dry bag with extra batteries and memory cards. Sienna checked the engine, the fuel, the navigation lights. She's meticulous about maintenance. She grew up sailing with her dad in the Bay Area and knows boats the way some people know cars. I trust her completely when we're on the water. We motored out of the marina around 5 p.m. The sun was still high but starting to soften. The water in the harbor was flat and green. A few other boats were coming in for the day. Weekenders, charter fishing crews, a couple of kayakers paddling near the breakwater. Normal marina traffic. We passed through the channel and hit open water. Sienna killed the motor and raised the sails. The wind was light but steady from the northwest. We tacked west along the coast. Malibu slid past on our right. Big houses perched on cliffs. Narrow beaches dotted with surfers. The PCH snaking along the shoreline like a thread. I shot a few frames but mostly just watched. The light was changing fast. Golden hour was coming. By 6:30, we were about 3 miles offshore between Point Dume and Zuma Beach. Sienna dropped anchor in 30 feet of water. The bottom was sand and rock. Good holding ground. She set the anchor alarm on her GPS and we settled in to wait for dark. I set up the tripod on the bow and mounted one of the cameras. The moon would rise in the east around 7:45. I wanted to be ready. We ate sandwiches Sienna had packed. Turkey and avocado. She always brings good food. We drank water from a cooler and watched the sun sink toward the horizon. The sky went from blue to orange to deep purple. The first stars appeared. Venus hung bright and low in the southwest. A cargo ship passed far to the south, its lights like a small city moving across the black water. Around 7:30, I noticed the wind had died. Completely. The sails hung limp. The water around the boat went smooth, not calm. Smooth. Like glass. I could see our reflection in it. The mast, the rigging, even the stars overhead mirrored perfectly on the surface. "That's weird," Sienna said. She was standing at the helm, looking at the water. "Wind doesn't usually drop like that, not this fast." I checked the sky. No clouds, no weather moving in, just clear air and stars getting brighter as the light faded. "Maybe we're in a pocket," I said, "between systems." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. She went below to check the engine. I heard her turn the key. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. The starter didn't even click. She came back up. "Battery's dead." "How?" I asked. "You checked it before we left." "I know," Yishitshin said. "It was full. Now it's completely dead. Gauges won't even light up." I pulled out my phone to check the time. No signal. That wasn't unusual this far offshore, but the phone itself was acting strange. The screen flickered. The battery icon showed empty even though I'd charged it to full before leaving. I tried to turn it off and restart it. It wouldn't respond. "Try the radio," I said. Sienna went below again. I heard static, then nothing. She came back up holding the VHF handset. "Dead," she said. "Backup battery too." We looked at each other. The boat rocked gently in the glassy water. There was no sound except the faint slap of tiny waves against the hull. No wind, no gulls, no distant traffic from the PCH. Just silence. "We'll wait it out," Sienna said. Something's draining the electrical system. Could be a short. Once it stops, we'll get power back and motor in. I nodded. It made sense. But something in my gut didn't agree. I've been on the water enough times to know when things feel wrong. This felt wrong. The air was too still, the silence was too complete, and the water was too smooth. I turned back to the camera and checked the settings. I was shooting on a 10-second exposure to capture star trails. The moon was due any minute. I framed the shot, horizon line low, sky taking up most of the frame. I pressed the shutter and waited. That's when I saw it. Far to the west, maybe 5 miles out. A thin, white line appeared in the sky. Not a shooting star, not a plane. A line, perfectly straight, vertical. It stretched from the horizon upward maybe 30 degrees and then just stopped. It didn't fade, it didn't move, it just hung there like someone had drawn it with a ruler and a white pen. "Sienna," I said. My voice sounded flat, muffled, like I was speaking into a pillow. She turned. "What?" I pointed. She saw it. I watched her face change, confusion, then something else. Fear? Fascination? I couldn't tell. "What is that?" she asked. "I don't know." The line brightened, not gradually. All at once. It went from faint to brilliant in a blink, bright enough that I had to squint. And then it started to move. It didn't drift or arc, it slid sideways, fast, parallel to the horizon. It crossed maybe 2 degrees of sky in a second and stopped. Then it moved again. Vertical this time. Up, it climbed and stopped, then sideways again. I grabbed the camera. I'd left it on the tripod pointed east for the moon. I swung it around and framed the line. I pressed the shutter. The exposure time was 10 seconds. I held my breath and watched the line through the viewfinder. It moved 3 more times during the exposure. Sharp angles, no curves, no acceleration or deceleration, just instant movement and instant stops. The shutter closed. I checked the LCD screen. The image showed the sky, stars, the horizon, but no line. I zoomed in on the frame. Nothing. Just black sky and white stars. "Did you get it?" Sienna asked. "No," I said. "It's not there." "What do you mean it's not there? It's right in front of us." I showed her the screen. She stared at it. Then, back at the sky, the line was still there. Still moving in those sharp geometric paths. But the camera couldn't see it. I switched to video mode. I pressed record and aimed at the line. I let it run for 30 seconds. The line moved 4 more times. I stopped recording and played it back. The video showed the sky, the stars, the faint glow of light pollution from Malibu, and a sound. A low, rhythmic thumping. Steady, about 60 beats per minute. "Is that the boat?" I asked. Sienna listened. "No. The boat's not making any sound. Everything's dead." I played it again. The thumping was clearer the second time. Regular, organic. It took me a moment to place it. Then I did. It was a heartbeat, my heartbeat. The camera was picking up the sound of my pulse. "Why would the camera record your heartbeat?" Sienna asked. "I don't know," I said. "It shouldn't. The mic shouldn't be able to pick that up." I checked the audio levels on the display. The waveform showed clear spikes matching the rhythm of the thumping. I pressed the mic against my chest. The sound got louder. I moved it away. The sound stayed the same volume. It wasn't coming from me, it was coming from somewhere else. But the camera thought it was my heartbeat. The line in the sky stopped moving. It hung there for maybe 10 seconds. Then it split. 1 line became 2. The 2 lines spread apart. Horizontal, even, like goalposts. Then they split again. 4 lines now, then 8. They formed a grid, a perfect geometric grid covering maybe 20 degrees of sky. And then the grid started to glow. Not white anymore. Orange. The same color as the glow we'd seen at Bonnie Doon Beach. The same color that had crawled up the sand and turned it dark. My stomach dropped. My hands started to shake. I lowered the camera. "Sienna, we need to leave," I said. "The engine's dead," she said. Her voice was tight. "We can't leave. Then we need to get below. Close the hatch, turn off the lights. The lights are already off. Everything's off." The glow from the grid brightened. I could feel warmth on my face. Not sun warmth, not fire warmth, something else. It made my skin tingle, like static electricity but deeper. I felt it in my teeth, in my bones. Sienna grabbed my arm. "Jason, look." I turned. The water around the boat was glowing. The same pale, greenish glow I'd seen in the research vessel incident off Moss Landing. It spread in a circle around us, maybe 50 feet in diameter. The edges were sharp, clean, like someone had drawn a line in the water and everything inside it glowed and everything outside stayed dark. The boat started to hum. Not the engine, the hull itself. I could feel it through the deck, a low vibration that climbed in pitch. The rigging started to vibrate. The metal fittings buzzed. My camera on the tripod shook. I grabbed it before it fell. "We're getting off the boat," I said. "Into the water?" Sienna asked. "Are you insane?" "We don't know what's happening. If the boat's the target, we need to be somewhere else." She looked at the glowing water, at the grid in the sky, at me. Then she nodded. We moved fast. She grabbed the emergency ditch bag from the cabin. Flares, waterproof flashlight, a whistle, a space blanket. I grabbed my camera and shoved it in the dry bag. We put on life jackets and moved to the stern. The water was cold. November in the Pacific is always cold, but this was colder than it should have been. I felt it through my jeans and jacket immediately. Sienna slipped in beside me. We held onto the swim ladder and watched the boat. The humming got louder. The glow in the water intensified. And then I saw movement, not in the water, in the air, above the boat. The grid was descending, slowly, deliberately. The orange lines moved down toward us like a cage lowering from the sky. "Swim," Sienna said. "Now." We let go of the ladder and kicked away from the boat. The life jackets kept us high in the water but made swimming awkward. I used a side stroke and kept the dry bag above the surface. Sienna swam beside me. We put maybe 30 yards between us and the boat before we stopped to look back. The grid was touching the mast. Where the orange lines made contact, the metal glowed white-hot. I could see smoke. The rigging started to sag. The grid kept descending. It reached the deck. The fiberglass bubbled. The wood trim blackened. But there was no fire, no flames, just heat. Intense, focused heat that was melting the boat from the top down. And then the grid stopped. It hovered there halfway down the mast, glowing and humming. The water around the boat was still glowing that pale green. But the water around us had gone dark. We were outside the circle now, treading water in the black Pacific with our boat being slowly destroyed by something we couldn't explain. I looked up. The stars were gone. Not blocked by clouds. Just gone. The sky was black. Completely black. No light pollution from Malibu. No moon rising in the east. No Venus in the southwest. Just solid, unbroken darkness. "Jason," Sienna whispered. "Where's the shore?" I turned. I couldn't see it. The lights from the houses on the cliff should have been visible. The glow from the PCH. The pier lights from Malibu. All of it should have been there. But there was nothing. Just black. We were floating in the middle of nothing with no reference points. No horizon. No up or down except the feel of the water and the weight of the life jackets. The humming changed pitch. It rose higher. My ears started to ache. I felt pressure building in my sinuses. Sienna grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight enough to hurt. "Something's in the water," she said. "What?" I felt something brush my leg. I went still. I strained to see below the surface. The water was too dark. I couldn't see more than a few inches down. I felt a current, not natural, too directional. Something was moving beneath us, something large. The glow around the boat pulsed, once, twice, then it went out. The grid in the sky went out with it. The humming stopped, and we were floating in total silence and total darkness. I couldn't see Sienna even though she was right next to me. I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow, panicked. I reached out and found her hand. She squeezed hard. "I can't see anything," she said. "I know. What do we do? We wait. Something has to change. It can't stay like this." But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything. We were 3 miles offshore in the middle of the night with no power, no radio, no way to signal for help. And something had just melted our boat with a grid of orange light that our cameras couldn't see. I tried to think practically. We had life jackets. We had the ditch bag somewhere. Sienna had been holding it. We could float for hours if we had to. When the sun came up, we'd be able to see the shore. We could swim in. 3 miles is a long swim, but it's doable. We just had to stay calm and stay together. Then I heard it. A sound in the water, not waves, not our breathing. Something else. A faint hissing, like air escaping from a tire. It came from below, from deep below. "You hear that?" I whispered. "Yes." The hissing got louder, and then I felt it again. That current. Moving beneath us. Strong enough to push us sideways. I kicked to stay in place. Sienna did the same. The water around us started to glow. Not green this time. Blue. A deep electric blue that came from underneath. It spread in a wide circle. I could see Sienna's face now. Her eyes were wide. Her skin looked pale in the blue light. I looked down. Below us, maybe 20 feet down, a shape was rising. It was massive. Wider than the boat. Smooth. No features I could make out. Just a dark shape silhouetted against the blue glow. It moved slowly, deliberately, coming up toward us. "Swim," I said. "Swim now." We kicked hard. The life jackets made speed impossible, but we moved. We put distance between us and the rising shape. I didn't look back. I just kicked and pulled with my free arm and focused on breathing and not panicking. Behind us, the blue glow intensified. The water around the shape began to churn. I felt the turbulence reach us. A wave lifted us and pushed us forward. Then another. The water was moving, boiling. But not from heat, from something else. I risked a glance back. The shape had stopped rising. It was suspended just below the surface. The blue glow outlined it perfectly now. It was circular or oval, hard to tell from this angle, and it had seams, lines running along its surface like panels on a hull. But this was no boat, no submarine. The shape was too large, too smooth, and it pulsed with that blue light like it was alive. Then it began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. The water around it spun with it. We were caught in the edge of the rotation. The current pulled us sideways. I grabbed Sienna's hand and held on. We were being dragged in a wide circle around the shape. "Don't let go," I shouted. "I won't." The rotation sped up. The water churned harder. I was spinning now, tumbling. I lost track of which way was up. The life jacket kept me at the surface, but I couldn't orient myself. I held on to Sienna's hand and the dry bag and just tried to breathe every time my face broke the surface. And then it stopped. The rotation cut off like someone had flipped a switch. The water went calm. I gasped for air. Sienna was coughing beside me. We were both still holding on. The blue glow faded, slowly, like a dimmer being turned down. In 30 seconds it was gone. The shape below us was gone. The churning was gone. We were floating in dark, still water, with no sound except our own ragged breathing. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. Nothing happened. The darkness held. The silence held. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, my breathing evening out. Sienna's grip on my hand loosened slightly. "Is it over?" she asked. "I don't know." "Where's the boat?" I looked around. I couldn't see anything. No glow, no reference points. Just blackness. "I don't know," I said again. We floated. We waited. And slowly, gradually, the stars came back. One at a time, faint at first, then brighter. I saw Orion, the Big Dipper. Venus reappeared low in the southwest, and with the stars came the horizon. I could see the glow from Malibu, faint but there. The lights on the cliffs, the pier lights. We'd drifted north, maybe half a mile, but the shore was visible. "There," I said, pointing. "We can swim to that." Sienna turned. She saw it. She nodded. We started swimming. Slow, steady, conserving energy. The shore looked far, but it was there. That was enough. We swam for what felt like hours, but was probably closer to 40 minutes. The life jackets kept us afloat, but made forward progress slow. My arms ached, my legs cramped. The cold water leached heat from my core, but I kept kicking, kept pulling, kept watching the lights on the shore grow brighter. Sienna stayed beside me the whole time. She didn't complain, didn't ask to stop. She just swam. I could hear her breathing hard, controlled. She was pacing herself the way you do when you know you have a long way to go. The dry bag with my camera dragged at my shoulder. I thought about letting it go, but I didn't. Some irrational part of me needed to hold on to it, needed to have something physical from what we'd just experienced, even if the camera hadn't captured the light, even if the only thing on the memory card was the sound of my heartbeat. The water around us stayed dark and calm. No more glowing, no more shapes, no more currents. Just cold Pacific Ocean and the distant sound of waves breaking on the beach. Normal. Safe. I tried to let that calm me. It didn't work completely, but it helped. When we were maybe 200 yards from shore, my feet touched bottom. Sandy bottom. I stood. The water was chest deep. Sienna stood beside me. We looked at each other. Her hair was plastered to her head. Her face was pale. But she was smiling. A small, exhausted smile. "We made it," she said. "Yeah," I said. "We did." We waded in. The waves pushed at our backs. Small shore break, nothing dramatic. When the water was waist deep, I stumbled. My legs didn't want to hold my weight anymore. Sienna caught my arm. We helped each other the rest of the way. We collapsed on the sand above the waterline. I lay on my back and stared at the sky. The stars were all there, bright and clear. Orion directly overhead. The moon had risen while we were swimming. It hung fat and orange in the east. Everything looked normal, like the last 2 hours hadn't happened. I sat up and looked at where we'd come from. The ocean was black. I couldn't see the boat, couldn't see any lights offshore. No grid, no glow, just water and sky and the sound of waves. Sienna was digging in the ditch bag. She pulled out the waterproof flashlight and turned it on. It worked. The beam was bright and steady. She swept it along the beach. We were north of Zuma. I recognized the rock formations. There was a public beach access about half a mile south. We could walk there, find a phone, call the Coast Guard. "Can you walk?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "You?" "I think so." We stood. My legs shook, but they held. We started south along the beach. The sand was soft and cold. Each step took effort. But we kept moving. The moon gave us enough light to see by. We didn't talk. We just walked. After about 10 minutes, I saw headlights on the PCH. Cars passing. Normal traffic. The sight of them made my chest loosen. We weren't alone out here. Civilization was right there, a few hundred yards away. We just had to reach it. We hit the beach access parking lot around 11 p.m. There were 2 cars parked near the restrooms. One had its interior light on. A couple sitting inside eating fast food. I walked up and knocked on the window. The guy inside jumped. He rolled the window down a crack. "Sorry to bother you," I said. "We need to call the Coast Guard. Our boat broke down offshore. We had to swim in." He looked at us, at our wet clothes, at Sienna's life jacket, at the dry bag over my shoulder. His expression went from annoyed to concerned. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, we just need a phone." He handed me his cell. I dialed 911. The operator answered. I told her we'd had a marine emergency, that our boat had lost power 3 miles offshore between Point Doom and Zuma Beach, that we'd abandoned ship and swam to shore. She asked if we needed medical attention. I looked at Sienna. She shook her head. "No," I said, "we're fine. But the boat's still out there. Someone needs to retrieve it." The operator said she'd dispatch the Coast Guard. She asked for our location. I gave her the address from the beach access sign. She said a unit would be there within 20 minutes. I thanked her and handed the phone back to the guy in the car. "You sure you don't need a hospital?" he asked. "We're sure," I said. "Just cold and tired." He nodded. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a blanket. "Here. It's not much, but it'll help." Sienna took it and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Thank you," she said. We sat on the curb near the restrooms and waited. The couple in the car stayed with us. They didn't ask questions. Just kept their hazards on, so we'd be easy to spot when help arrived. A sheriff's patrol car pulled into the lot first, then an ambulance, then a Coast Guard truck. A paramedic checked us over, took our temperatures, asked about breathing difficulties, chest pain, confusion. We answered honestly, cold, tired, but otherwise fine. They wrapped us in thermal blankets and had us sit in the back of the ambulance with the doors open. A Coast Guard officer approached. Young guy, maybe 30. He had a clipboard and a serious expression. "I'm Petty Officer Reyes," he said. "You're the ones who called about the abandoned vessel?" "Yes," I said. "Can you give me the details? Location, vessel description, what happened?" I told him. We'd been anchored about 3 miles offshore. The engine died. The radio died. The electrical system failed completely. We decided to abandon ship and swim to shore. I didn't mention the lights. I didn't mention the grid. I didn't mention the shape in the water. I just gave him the basic facts. Power failure. Abandonment. Swim to shore. He wrote it all down. "Did you file a float plan?" "No," Sienna said. "We were just going out for the evening. We didn't plan to stay overnight. What's the vessel name and registration?" Sienna gave him the details. He radioed it in. We heard the dispatcher acknowledge. He told us a patrol boat would search the area at first light. If they found the vessel, they'd tow it in. If it had sunk, they'd mark the location and notify us. "You're lucky," he said. 3-mile swim in November. Most people wouldn't make that. We had life jackets, I said. Still lucky. He asked a few more questions. Had we seen any other vessels? Had we activated any distress signals? Had we been drinking? We answered no to everything. He seemed satisfied. He gave us a case number and said someone would contact us in the next few days. The paramedics cleared us to leave. We didn't have a car. We'd parked at the marina in Marina del Rey. That was 20 miles south. The couple who'd let us use their phone offered to drive us. We accepted. The drive was quiet. Sienna sat in the back with the thermal blanket still wrapped around her. I sat in the front and watched the PCH slide past. Malibu, Pepperdine, Topanga. Everything looked normal, bright, populated, real. When we reached Marina del Rey, the couple dropped us at Sienna's parking spot. Her car was there, a beat-up Honda Civic with a surfboard rack. She thanked them, so did I. They drove off. We stood in the parking lot. "Where are you parked?" she asked. "Other side of the lot." "You okay to drive?" "Yeah, you?" She nodded. But she didn't move toward her car. She just stood there looking at the marina, at the boats tied up in their slips, at the masts swaying gently in the breeze. Her boat wasn't there. Her boat was somewhere offshore. Maybe sinking, maybe already sunk. Her home, her studio, everything she owned. "Sienna," I said. She turned. Her eyes were wet. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." "I will be." I didn't argue. I pulled the dry bag off my shoulder and opened it. The camera was inside, dry, undamaged. I turned it on. The battery showed full. That didn't make sense. It had been dead on the boat, but I didn't question it. I scrolled to the video I'd recorded, the one with the heartbeat sound. I played it. The audio was still there. That rhythmic thumping, steady, organic. I turned up the volume. Sienna leaned in to listen. "That's your heartbeat?" she asked. "I think so, but I don't know why the camera would record it like that." "Play it again." I did. This time I listened more carefully. The rhythm was steady but not perfectly regular. There were small variations, micro pauses. And underneath the thumping, there was something else, a faint hissing. The same hissing we'd heard in the water before the shape rose. "Do you hear that?" I asked. "The hissing?" "Yeah. What is it?" "I don't know." I stopped the playback and checked the other files, the long exposure photos I'd taken before the grid appeared. I scrolled through them. Stars, horizon, the boat's rigging silhouetted against the sky. Everything looked normal. Then I reached the shot I'd taken of the grid. The image was black, completely black. No stars, no horizon, just solid black. But when I zoomed in, I saw something. Faint lines, geometric patterns. They were barely visible. Light gray against dark gray. But they were there. The grid. The camera had captured it. Just not in the visible spectrum. "Look at this," I said. Sienna looked. "What am I seeing?" "The grid. It's there, just very faint." She zoomed in further. The lines became more defined, perfect right angles, perfect spacing, laid out like a blueprint. "Why is it so faint?" "I don't know. Maybe it's only partially visible in normal light. Maybe it exists in a frequency we can't fully see." "That doesn't make sense." "None of this makes sense." She handed the camera back. I saved the images to the memory card and turned the camera off. We stood there in the parking lot not knowing what to say. The whole thing felt surreal, like a dream we'd both had. Except it wasn't a dream. The thermal blankets were real. The Coast Guard case number was real. The missing boat was real. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Wait for the Coast Guard to find the boat." See if it's salvageable. If it's not..." She trailed off. "If it's not? I'll figure something out. I always do. You can stay with me. I have a couch." She smiled. "Thanks. I might take you up on that." We stood there a moment longer. Then she unlocked her car and got in. I watched her drive out of the lot and turn onto Mindanao Way. Her taillights disappeared around a corner. I walked to my truck and sat in the driver's seat. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel and stared at the marina. My phone was in the cup holder. Dead. I plugged it into the charger. It powered on slowly. The screen showed 11 missed calls. 3 from my mom, 2 from a client, 6 from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. I opened the Photos app and scrolled to the images I'd synced from my camera earlier in the day. Tide pools, kelp forests, a harbor seal hauled out on a rock. Normal work. Normal subjects. I closed the app. I should have driven home. I should have showered and slept and tried to forget. But I didn't. I opened the browser on my phone and searched. Unexplained lights, Malibu coast. Electrical failure boats, Pacific Ocean. UFO sightings, California, November. The results came fast. Too fast. Dozens of forum posts, news articles, Coast Guard reports. Going back years. People seeing lights, grids, shapes in the water. Equipment failures. Most of it was dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. But the details were too consistent. Too specific. One article from a sailing blog caught my attention, posted 3 weeks earlier. A couple had been sailing from Santa Barbara to Marina del Rey. They'd lost power off Point Doom. Their GPS went haywire, their compass spun, and they'd seen a white line in the sky that moved in sharp angles before disappearing. They'd filed a report with the Coast Guard, no follow-up. I found another, a fishing charter captain in Ventura. September, same thing. Power failure. Navigation failure. Strange lights. He'd turned back to port and never mentioned it publicly until someone asked about it on a forum. He said he didn't report it because he didn't want to sound crazy. I kept scrolling. More stories, more incidents. All along the coast from Oxnard to Malibu, all within the last 6 months. And all dismissed or ignored. I closed the browser, I sat in the truck and felt the cold settle into my bones. We weren't the first. We wouldn't be the last. And nobody was paying attention. I started the engine and drove home to my apartment in Venice. I parked on the street and climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. My place is small, 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 1 person, a living room with a couch and a coffee table covered in camera gear. I dropped the dry bag by the door and went straight to the bathroom. I turned on the shower. Hot as it would go. I stood under the spray until my skin turned red and the cold finally left my body. Then I got out, dried off, and put on sweatpants and a hoodie. I made tea. Chamomile. I don't usually drink tea, but I needed something warm that wasn't coffee. I sat on the couch and held the mug and stared at the wall. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought they'd be shaking. I thought I'd be falling apart. But I felt numb more than anything. Like I was watching myself from a distance, going through the motions, breathing, drinking tea, existing. I pulled out my laptop and imported the photos and video from the camera. I opened the video file in an editing program and isolated the audio. I ran it through a spectrum analyzer. The heartbeat sound showed up as clear spikes at 60 beats per minute. But the hissing was more complex. It had layers, multiple frequencies overlapping, some in the audible range, some below, subsonic. I exported the audio and saved it. Then I opened the photo of the grid. I adjusted the levels, pushed the exposure, pulled the shadows. The faint gray lines became more visible. They weren't random, they formed a pattern, A grid within a grid. Fractal, repeating at different scales. I saved that too. Then I closed the laptop and sat back. I had documentation now. Not proof. Nobody would call it proof, but documentation. Evidence that something had happened. That the lights were real. That the grid existed. Even if only in frequencies most people couldn't see. I thought about posting it online, sharing it on forums, sending it to news outlets. But I knew what would happen. People would call it fake, CGI, a hoax for attention. The ones who believed it would ask for more evidence, more photos, more video, and I didn't have more. I just had this. One video, one photo, and a story that sounded insane. I didn't post anything. I just saved the files to an external drive and put the drive in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd know what to do with it. But not tonight. I lay down on the couch. I didn't think I'd be able to sleep, but exhaustion pulled me under fast. I dreamed of dark water, of blue light rising from below, of a shape so large I couldn't see the edges, and when I woke up 3 hours later, my heart was pounding and my shirt was soaked with sweat. I didn't hear from the Coast Guard for 3 days. On the 4th day, a petty officer called my phone. They'd found the boat, or what was left of it. It had been adrift about 5 miles northwest of where we'd abandoned it. The hull was intact, but the deck was severely damaged. Melted fiberglass. Warped metal fittings. The mast had collapsed. The rigging was fused into twisted clumps. They'd towed it to a salvage yard in Ventura. Sienna would need to make arrangements for disposal or repair. The officer asked if we'd had flares on board, or any pyrotechnic devices, something that could have caused that kind of heat damage. I told him no. We didn't have flares. We didn't have anything that could melt fiberglass and metal. He paused. Then he said the damage was unusual and that they'd include it in their incident report. He gave me the contact information for the salvage yard and hung up. I called Sienna. She answered on the second ring. "They found it," I said. "I know. They called me an hour ago." "Are you going to look at it?" "Tomorrow? You want to come?" "Yeah." We met at the salvage yard in Ventura the next morning. The yard was a sprawling lot filled with damaged boats, fishing vessels with cracked hulls, sailboats with broken masts, speedboats that looked like they'd hit rocks at full throttle. Sienna's boat was in the back corner covered with a blue tarp. The yard manager pulled the tarp off. I heard Sienna take a sharp breath beside me. The boat looked like it had been in a fire, but there was no soot, no smoke damage, just melted and warped material. The deck where the grid had touched was bubbled and sagging. The mast was bent at an unnatural angle. The metal winches had partially melted and resolidified into organic shapes, like wax. "What the hell happened to it?" the yard manager asked. "We don't know," Sienna said. "The electrical system failed. We abandoned ship." "This doesn't look like electrical failure. This looks like someone took a torch to it." "We don't know," she said again. He walked around the boat, taking photos with his phone. "Insurance is going to want to see this. This is some of the strangest damage I've seen, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Sienna didn't respond. She was staring at the deck, at the pattern of damage. I could see it too. The melted areas formed lines, geometric lines, like the grid had branded itself into the fiberglass. You could see the right angles, the even spacing, if you knew what to look for. "Can I take some photos?" I asked. "Sure," the manager said. "Insurance will want documentation anyway." I pulled out my camera and started shooting. Wide shots, close-ups, detail shots of the melted fittings and the warped deck. I shot for about 15 minutes. The manager wandered off to deal with another customer. Sienna climbed onto the boat. Be careful, I said. It might not be stable. I need to get my things. She disappeared below deck. I kept shooting. I focused on the pattern and the damage. The way the lines intersected. The way they radiated out from a central point where the grid had been brightest. It was deliberate, precise, not random heat damage. Controlled. Sienna came back up carrying a duffel bag and a plastic storage bin. Her face was streaked with tears, but she wasn't crying. She climbed off the boat and set the items on the ground. That's everything? I asked. Everything that matters. We loaded her things into my truck. The yard manager came back and told Sienna she had 30 days to make a decision about the boat. Repair or scrap. She nodded and signed some paperwork. We left. We drove south on the 101 in silence. Sienna stared out the window at the ocean. The water was blue and calm. Sailboats dotted the surface. Surfers in wetsuits paddled out past the break. Everything looked normal, safe. But I knew she was seeing something else. The same thing I saw every time I looked at the water now. The memory of that night. The grid, the glow, the shape. Where are you staying? I asked. With a friend in Silver Lake. She's letting me crash until I figure things out. And then, I don't know. Maybe I'll move back to the Bay Area, start over. You don't have to leave. She looked at me. Yeah, I do. I can't be here anymore. Every time I see the ocean, I'm going to think about what happened. I can't paint it. I can't enjoy it. It's ruined for me now. I didn't argue. I understood. The ocean was ruined for me too. I just hadn't admitted it out loud yet. I dropped her at her friend's apartment in Silver Lake. She grabbed her things from the truck bed. Thank you, she said, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. You kept me calm out there. If I'd been alone... She didn't finish. You would have been fine. You're one of the toughest people I know. She smiled, a small, sad smile. I don't feel tough right now. Nobody would. She turned to go, then stopped. Jason? Yeah? Are you going to tell anyone about what we saw? I don't know. Are you? No, I don't see the point. Nobody would believe us. And even if they did, what would change? We don't know what it was. We don't know why it happened. All we do is make ourselves sound crazy. Yeah, I said. Probably. She nodded. Take care of yourself. You too. I watched her carry her things up the steps and into the building. The door closed behind her. I sat in the truck for a few minutes. Then I drove home. Over the next few weeks, I tried to go back to normal. I took client calls. I shot product photos. I edited images. I paid bills. I did laundry. All the regular things. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that night. To the grid. To the heartbeat in the audio. To the shape rising from below. I stopped taking jobs that required ocean work. When clients asked for coastal shots, I told them I was booked. When friends invited me to the beach, I made excuses. I avoided the PCH. I took surface streets even when it added 20 minutes to my drive. At night, I dreamed about the water. Always the same dream. I'm floating in darkness. The stars are gone. The shore is gone. And something is rising beneath me. I can feel the current, the displacement, the weight of something massive moving through the deep. I try to swim away, but I can't move. I'm frozen. Waiting, and just before it reaches me, I wake up. In December, I got an email from an unknown address. No subject line, just a link to a private forum. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. I clicked the link. The forum was small, maybe 30 members, all of them using anonymous handles. The posts were about unexplained phenomena along the California coast. Lights, equipment failures, missing time, strange sounds. Most of it sounded like the kind of conspiracy nonsense you find in the dark corners of the internet. But some of it was specific, too specific to be made up. One user posted about losing power off Point Doom in October. Same location, same symptoms, dead electrical, dead radio, smooth water. They didn't mention lights, but they mentioned a humming, a vibration in the hull. They'd motored in on a backup battery and never reported it. Another user posted about seeing a grid pattern in the sky off Oxnard in September. They'd taken photos, but the photos showed nothing, just black sky. They thought their camera had malfunctioned, but now they weren't sure. I read through dozens of posts, some recent, some going back years. The pattern was clear. This had been happening for a long time, and it was getting more frequent, more intense, more visible. I created an account. I didn't use my real name. I just picked a random handle. I posted about what Sienna and I had experienced. I didn't include photos. I didn't give specific dates. I just described it. The grid, the glow, the shape in the water, the boat damage. Within an hour, I had responses. Some people called it fake, attention-seeking, but others shared similar stories, same location, same phenomena. One person asked if I'd felt sick afterward, headaches, nausea, disorientation. I had felt sick. For about a week after, I'd had headaches that came and went, sharp pains behind my eyes, and sometimes I'd lose track of time. I'd be working on something and look up, and an hour had passed that felt like 10 minutes. I posted that. More responses came. Other people had experienced the same thing. Some worse. One person said they'd developed a ringing in their ears that hadn't stopped. Another said they couldn't look at bright lights anymore without getting vertigo. I spent hours on that forum, reading, responding, trying to find patterns, trying to make sense of it. But the more I read, the less sense it made. The phenomena didn't follow rules. It appeared randomly. Different locations, different times, different effects. The only constant was the coast. It always happened near the water, always between Oxnard and Malibu, and always at night. In January, the forum went dark. The site disappeared. I tried the link, dead. I searched for backups, archives, nothing. It was like it had never existed. I checked my email for the original message. It was gone too. Deleted. I hadn't deleted it. It just wasn't there anymore. I told myself it was a technical issue, a server failure, hosting problems. But I didn't believe it. Someone had shut it down. Someone didn't want people comparing notes, connecting dots. I thought about reaching out to the people I'd talked to on the forum, but I didn't have their real names. I didn't have their contact information. They were just anonymous handles on a site that no longer existed. I was alone with this again. I tried to let it go. I tried to focus on work, on life, on moving forward. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that there was a piece I hadn't seen yet, a connection I hadn't made. In February, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Jason Kimball?" The voice was male, professional, not threatening, but not friendly either. "Who's asking?" "My name is Agent Marsh. I'm with NOAA. I'd like to ask you a few questions about an incident you reported in November." My stomach dropped. "I didn't report anything. The Coast Guard has you listed as a witness to a marine emergency, vessel power failure, abandonment at sea. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you swam approximately 3 miles to shore?" "Yes." "Can you describe the power failure? What happened exactly?" I thought about lying, but what was the point? Everything died, engine, radio, navigation, all at once. Had you experienced any electrical issues prior to that evening? No. And the vessel was inspected and maintained regularly? Yes. The owner is very careful about maintenance. There was a pause. I heard typing in the background. Mr. Kimball, I'm looking at photos of the vessel damage. The deck shows signs of extreme heat exposure, melted fiberglass, warped metal, but no fire damage. Can you explain that? No, I was already in the water when that happened. So you didn't witness what caused the damage? No. More typing. Have you experienced any unusual symptoms since the incident? Headaches, sleep disturbances, memory gaps? I hesitated. Why are you asking? Just routine follow-up, have you? Some headaches, nothing serious. And have you seen any unusual phenomena in the area since? Lights, objects, anything out of the ordinary? No. If you do, I'd like you to report it. You have my contact information? No. He gave me an email address. I wrote it down on a napkin. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me, Mr. Kimball? I thought about the grid, about the video, about the shape in the water. No, that's everything. Thank you for your time. If you think of anything else, please reach out. He hung up. I sat there, holding the phone. NOAA doesn't follow up on routine Coast Guard incidents. Not like this. Not with questions about symptoms and unusual phenomena. They knew something, or they were looking for something. I looked at the email address on the napkin. It was a generic NOAA domain, but the name was what caught my attention. jmarsh@noaa.gov. I opened my laptop and searched Agent Marsh NOAA. Nothing came up. I searched J. Marsh NOAA Oceanography. Still nothing. I tried variations. Different search engines, government databases. No results. Either Agent Marsh was very low profile or he didn't exist. I crumpled the napkin and threw it away. I wasn't going to contact him. I wasn't going to share the video or the photos. Whatever was happening, the government already knew about it. And if they knew about it and weren't telling anyone, there was a reason. I decided then to stop looking, stop searching, stop trying to understand. Sienna was right. We didn't know what it was. We couldn't do anything about it. And digging deeper was only going to make things worse. I deleted the forum bookmark. I moved the external drive with the photos and video to the back of a drawer. I stopped checking NOAA buoy data. I stopped reading sailing blogs. I let it go, or I tried to. It's June now, 7 months since that night. I'm still working, still living in Venice, still taking photos, but I don't shoot the ocean anymore. When people ask why, I tell them I'm focusing on other subjects. Urban landscapes, portraits, anything but water. Sienna moved to Oregon. We text occasionally, short messages. How are you? I'm good. You? Same. We don't talk about that night. We don't need to. It sits between us like a third person in the conversation. Always there, never mentioned. I still have the dreams, not every night, but often enough. The dark water, the rising shape, the feeling of something massive moving beneath me. I wake up and check my pulse, make sure my heart is beating regular, make sure I'm still here. I'm writing this now because I need to get it out. I need to put it somewhere other than my head. I'm not looking for answers anymore. I'm not trying to prove anything. I just need to say what happened and let it exist outside of me. On November 8th of last year, Sienna Cruz and I went out on her boat to photograph the moonrise. We lost power 3 miles offshore. We saw lights in the sky that moved in ways nothing should move. We saw a grid of orange light that melted fiberglass and metal. We saw the ocean glow. We saw something rise from the deep, and we swam 3 miles to shore in the dark. That's what happened. That's the truth. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter to me anymore. What matters is that I'm still here, I'm still working, I'm still breathing, and I'm staying away from the water between Oxnard and Malibu, especially at night. Especially when the sky is clear and the wind dies and the ocean goes smooth like glass. If you sail that coast, keep your radio on. Keep your backup batteries charged. And if you see a white line in the sky that moves in sharp angles, turn around. Head for shore. Don't wait to see what happens next. We waited. We saw. And we barely made it back. That's my warning. That's my story. And that's all I have to say about it. The ocean keeps its secrets. I'm fine with that now. I don't need to know what's out there. I just need to stay away from it. And I do, every single day. My name is Derek Lang. I work as a radar technician for the Port of Los Angeles. I've been doing this job for 11 years. I know how ships move. I know how weather patterns show up on screen. I know the difference between a container vessel and a fishing boat just by looking at the return signature. I know when something is behaving the way it should and when it isn't. What I'm about to tell you happened over the course of 3 nights in late October of last year. I'm writing it down because I need to get it out of my head, because I can't sleep without seeing that frozen screen. Because my supervisor told me to drop it, and I can't. And because if I don't tell someone what I saw, I think I'm going to lose my mind. I work the overnight shift. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The radar room is on the 3rd floor of the Port Operations building in San Pedro. It's a small room, 4 screens, 2 chairs, 1 coffee maker that's been broken since 2019. My job is to monitor vessel traffic in and out of the port, log positions, watch for anomalies, call harbor patrol if something looks wrong. It's quiet work, repetitive, the kind of job that lets your mind wander if you're not careful. Most nights, nothing happens. Ships come in, ships go out. I log them. I drink bad coffee from the machine downstairs. I watch the clock. When the shift ends, I drive home to my apartment in Wilmington and sleep until 4 p.m. Then I do it again. October 23rd started like any other night. I clocked in at 9:55 p.m. Relieved the evening shift operator. Checked the logs. Everything was normal. 3 container ships inbound, 2 outbound, a handful of tugboats moving between the terminals. I settled into the chair and pulled up the radar display. The screen shows a 60-mile radius centered on the Port of Los Angeles. Ships appear as bright blips with identifying data tags. The coastline shows up as a dark, irregular line. Everything else is open water rendered in shades of gray. I've stared at this screen for thousands of hours. I could navigate it with my eyes closed. At 11:17 p.m., I noticed something odd. A blip appeared about 15 miles southwest of Point Fermin. No identifying tag, no transponder signal, just a solid return. Stationary. I clicked on it to pull up more information. The system showed nothing. No vessel name, no registry, no speed or heading, just a position fix and a return strength that was stronger than it should have been for something that size. I assumed it was a glitch, maybe a reflection off a weather front. I flagged it and kept watching. The blip stayed put. Ships moved around it. The normal traffic pattern continued, but that blip didn't budge. After 10 minutes, I called it into Harbor Patrol. Harbor Patrol, this is Port Ops. I've got an unidentified stationary contact 15 miles southwest of Point Fermin. No transponder. Can you investigate? There was a pause, then a voice I recognized. Officer Reyes, same guy who'd dealt with the Bonnie Doon incident I'd heard about through the grapevine. Copy, Port Ops. We'll send a unit to check it out. Give me the coordinates. I read them off. He copied them down. Then he said, Is it moving? Negative. It's been stationary for 11 minutes. Any other vessels in the area? I checked. One container ship passing northbound about 2 miles east. Nothing else close. Copy. Will advise. The line went quiet. I kept watching the screen. The blip didn't move. At 11:34 p.m., the screen froze. Not a crash, not a flicker, just frozen. The blips stopped moving. The timestamp stopped updating. The cursor wouldn't respond to my mouse. I tried clicking. Nothing. I tried keyboard shortcuts. Nothing. I checked the system monitors. Power was good. Network connection was good. The computer itself was running. But the radar display was completely locked. I could see the timestamp on the screen. 11:34:07 p.m. It stayed there. I picked up the phone to call IT. Before I could dial, the screen unfroze. The ships jumped to new positions. The timestamp updated. 11:54:22 p.m. 20 minutes had passed. But I hadn't lost consciousness. I'd been sitting here the whole time. I'd been watching the clock on the wall. Only 7 minutes had passed on the wall clock. But the radar showed 20 minutes. I sat back in the chair. My hands were shaking. I pulled up the system logs. They showed a continuous record, no gap, no error. According to the logs, the radar had been running normally the entire time. But I'd watched it freeze. I'd watched 20 minutes pass on the screen while only 7 minutes passed in the room. The unidentified blip was gone. I searched the area. Nothing. Just the container ship continuing north and a few smaller vessels farther out. Whatever had been there was gone. I called Harbor Patrol back. "This is Port Ops. Did your unit reach those coordinates?" "Negative," Reyes said. "They're still en route. ETA 10 minutes. The contact is gone. I lost it during a system anomaly." "What kind of anomaly?" I hesitated. "How do you explain that time jumped forward on your screen, but not in the room?" "Display freeze. It's resolved now, but the contact disappeared." "Copy. We'll still check the area. Let you know what we find." "Thanks." I hung up. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down everything. The time the blip appeared. The time the screen froze. The time it unfroze. The discrepancy between the radar time and the wall clock time. I wrote it all down in case I needed to reference it later. In case I started to doubt what I'd seen. At 12:15 a.m., Reyes called back. "Port Ops, we're at the coordinates. Nothing here. No vessels. No debris. Clean water." "Copy. Thanks for checking." "You sure your radar was working right?" "Yeah, it's working now." "All right. If it shows up again, give us a call." "Will do." I went back to watching the screen. The rest of the shift was normal. Ships came and went. I logged them, nothing unusual, but I couldn't stop thinking about that frozen screen. About the time jump. About the blip that appeared and disappeared without moving. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I wrote up an incident report. System anomaly. Unidentified contact. Time discrepancy. I submitted it to my supervisor and went home. I didn't expect anything to come of it. It would probably say it was a software bug. My supervisor would file it and forget about it. That's how these things usually went. I couldn't sleep when I got home. I kept seeing that timestamp. 11:34:07. Frozen. I kept feeling the wrongness of sitting in a room where time moved normally while the screen showed 20 minutes passing in 7. I finally gave up and made coffee. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall until it was time to go back to work. The second night was October 24th. I came in expecting a normal shift. My supervisor pulled me aside before I could sit down. "Derek, about that report you filed." "Yeah?" "It says there's no record of any system freeze. The logs show continuous operation. No errors, no anomalies. I know what the logs say, but I watched it freeze. I watched the time jump. He looked at me. Not angry, just tired. Look, I'm not saying you didn't see something, but without evidence, there's nothing to investigate. If it happens again, try to document it, take a photo, record the screen, something. I will. Good. And Derek, don't make a big deal out of this. We don't need people thinking our systems are unreliable. I nodded. I understood what he was really saying. Drop it. Move on. Don't make waves. I took my seat. I pulled up the radar. Everything looked normal. I started the shift log. At 11:04 p.m., the same blip appeared, same location, 15 miles southwest of Point Fairman. No transponder, no movement, stationary. This time I was ready. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the screen. Then I started recording video. I called Harbor Patrol. "This is Port Ops. I've got that unidentified contact again. Same location as last night." Reyes was on duty again. "Same spot exactly?" "Affirmative." "Is it moving?" "Negative." "Copy. We'll send a unit." I kept recording. The blip stayed put. At 11:31 p.m., my phone died. Battery went from 60% to 0 in an instant. The screen went black. I tried to restart it. Nothing. I plugged it into the charger. The charge indicator didn't light up. At 11:34 p.m., the radar screen froze. Same timestamp as the night before. 11:34:07 p.m. I looked at the wall clock. I watched the second hand move. Tick, tick, tick. Steady. Normal. I looked back at the radar. Frozen. I counted seconds in my head. I got to 4:20 before the screen unfroze. 7 minutes in the room. The radar timestamp showed 11:54:22 p.m. 20 minutes on the screen. Exactly the same as the night before. The blip was gone. I checked the area. Nothing. I called Harbor Patrol. They were still en route. They'd arrive in 5 minutes. I told them the contact was gone. They said they'd check anyway. My phone was still dead. I tried it again. Nothing. I unplugged it from the charger and held down the power button. The screen flickered once and showed the Apple logo. It booted up. Battery showed 15%. I checked the video I'd recorded. It was there. I played it back. The video showed the radar screen. The blip, clear, visible. Then the video stuttered, frames dropped. The audio cut out. When it resumed, the blip was gone and the timestamp had jumped. The entire freeze had been recorded. The time jump was there. On video, documented. I copied the file to my email and sent it to myself. Then I sent it to a cloud storage account. I wasn't going to lose this. When Harbor Patrol called back, they reported the same thing as the night before. Nothing at the coordinates. Clean water. No vessels. No debris. No explanation. I finished the shift in silence. I didn't file a report this time. I just logged the contact as unidentified and left it at that. When I got home, I downloaded the video and watched it again. The time jump was clear, undeniable, but I knew what my supervisor would say. Equipment malfunction, software bug, nothing to worry about. I didn't care what he'd say. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd recorded. And I knew it was going to happen again. The third night was October 25th. I came in with a plan. I brought a second phone, a small digital camera, a notebook. I was going to document everything, every detail, every second. If the blip appeared again, I'd have multiple recordings from multiple devices. I clocked in, relieved the evening operator. Sat down. At 10:52 p.m., before the blip even appeared, I got a visitor. A woman in casual clothes, jeans, a navy blue windbreaker, short dark hair. She knocked on the open door. "Derek Lang?" she asked. Yeah. She stepped in and closed the door behind her. My name is Nora Green. I'm a researcher with Caltech. I study atmospheric phenomena. I was hoping to ask you a few questions. I looked at her. About what? About the incident you reported 2 nights ago, the radar anomaly. How do you know about that? I have access to certain incident reports, maritime anomalies, unexplained events. Your report showed up on my radar, no pun intended. My supervisor told me to drop it. I'm not asking you to file another report. I'm just asking you to talk to me, off the record. I hesitated. Why? Because I think what you saw is part of a pattern, and I think it's going to happen again tonight. What makes you think that? She pulled out a tablet and showed me a chart. I track unusual events along the California coast, equipment failures, navigation anomalies, time discrepancies. They cluster specific locations, specific dates, and they repeat on a cycle. What kind of cycle? Roughly 28 days. Lunar cycle. But not exactly. It's close, but not precise. The location you reported, 15 miles southwest of Point Fermin, has shown up in 3 other incidents over the last year. All of them involved radar contacts that appeared and disappeared. All of them involved time anomalies. Time anomalies. Discrepancies between recorded time and experienced time. Clocks running fast or slow, gaps in memory, systems freezing and unfreezing with time jumps. I stared at the chart. What is it? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Can I stay here tonight, observe? If it happens again, I want to document it. I thought about my supervisor's warning, don't make waves, but I also thought about that frozen screen, about the time jump, about the blip that appeared in the same spot 2 nights in a row. Yeah, you can stay. She pulled up a second chair. She set up her tablet to record the radar screen. She had her own equipment, a laptop, a small instrument I didn't recognize, something that looked like a Geiger counter but wasn't. What's that? I asked. Magnetometer, measures electromagnetic fields. If there's a strong EM source nearby, it'll pick it up. We waited. We didn't talk much. Just watched the screen. Ships came and went. I logged them. She took notes. At 11:16 p.m., the blip appeared. Same location, stationary, no transponder. There, I said. Nora leaned forward. Her magnetometer started clicking. Slow at first, then faster. It's here, she said. Strong EM signature, much stronger than background. I called Harbor Patrol. Same script as before. Unidentified contact, stationary, coordinates. They said they'd send a unit. Nora checked her watch. 17 minutes until 11:34. That's when it froze last night? Yeah, exactly 11:34. And the night before, same time. She nodded. Get ready, it's going to happen again. We watched the clock. The magnetometer kept clicking. Faster now. The screen stayed normal, ships moving, time updating. At 11:33, Nora started counting down. 60 seconds. I positioned my phone to record the screen. She did the same with her tablet. The magnetometer was clicking so fast it sounded like static. At 11:34:07, the screen froze. The ships stopped mid-movement. The timestamp locked. But this time I felt it. A pressure not in the air, inside my head. Like someone was pressing on my skull from the inside. My ears popped. My vision went slightly blurry. Nora grabbed my arm. Do you feel that? Yeah. Time's going to jump. Don't fight it. Just observe. I watched the wall clock. The second hand moved. 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3. Then it stuttered. It jumped ahead, 5 seconds forward, then another jump, 10 seconds, The movement was erratic, not smooth, like someone was fast-forwarding through time in chunks. The pressure in my head increased. My teeth ached. I tasted metal. The lights in the room flickered, not off, just dimmer. The computer monitors all showed the same frozen image. 11:34:07. Nora was writing in her notebook. Fast, her hand shaking. 28 seconds, 30, 35. She was counting out loud, timing it. At what felt like 7 minutes, though the wall clock had jumped around so much I couldn't be sure, the pressure released. My ears popped again. The screen unfroze. Ships jumped to new positions. The timestamp updated. 11:54:22 p.m. The blip was gone. Nora sat back. She was breathing hard. Her face was pale. 20 minutes, she said. Always 20 minutes. What just happened? I don't know. But it's not random. It's controlled, deliberate. Something is creating a localized temporal distortion, strong enough to affect electronic systems and human perception. My phone had died again. Battery at 0. Nora's tablet was still running. She pulled up the recording. We watched it. The freeze was there, but so was something else, a faint distortion in the image. Like heat shimmer, it pulsed once every few seconds, regular. "Did you see that while it was happening?" she asked. "No. The screen just looked frozen." But the camera caught it. Whatever this is, it exists in a spectrum we can't fully perceive, but sensors can detect it. I called Harbor Patrol. They were at the coordinates, nothing there, same as before. I thanked them and hung up. Nora packed up her equipment. "I need to check something. There's a beach access point near Point Fairman, about 3 miles from here. If this phenomenon is generating a physical signature, it might be detectable from shore." "You think you'll find something?" "I don't know, but I need to try. Do you want to come?" I looked at the clock. 12:07 a.m. My shift wasn't over for another 6 hours, but my relief wouldn't be in until 6 a.m. and the port was quiet. No major vessel movements scheduled until dawn. "Yeah, I'll come." We left the operations building and took her car. A beat-up Subaru with Caltech parking stickers and a trunk full of equipment cases. She drove down to Point Fermin Park and parked near the lighthouse. The park was closed, but she had a key to the access gate. Researcher privileges. We walked down a narrow trail to a rocky beach below the cliffs. The ocean was loud, waves hitting rocks, the smell of salt and kelp. Fog hung offshore in thick patches. The lighthouse beam swept across the water every 15 seconds. Regular. Predictable. Safe. Nora set up her magnetometer on a flat rock. She pulled out another instrument, something that looked like a directional antenna. She aimed it southwest, toward the coordinates where the blip had appeared. "Anything?" I asked. "Faint signal, very faint, but it's there." We stood on the beach. I looked up. The sky was overcast. No stars, just low clouds reflecting the light pollution from LA and Long Beach. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. Then I felt it. A single drop of water on my face. I wiped it away. It wasn't water, it was gritty. I touched my fingers to my cheek. Salt, dry salt, crystallized. I looked up again. No rain. No spray from the waves reaching this far. But another grain hit my face. Then another. "Nora," I said. She looked up. More grains fell. Tiny. Like snow, but salt, coming from above, from the empty sky. "Where's that coming from?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just held out her hand. The salt grains collected in her palm. Dozens of them. Falling steadily. From nothing. From nowhere. From a clear patch of sky where there should have been no source. She pulled out a small container and collected a sample. Then she aimed the antenna straight up. The device started beeping, slow, steady. "There's something up there," she said. "I don't see anything. Neither do I, but it's there." We stood there for another 10 minutes. The salt kept falling. Light. Barely noticeable unless you were paying attention, but constant. And when I looked at the rocks around us, I saw thin white patches. Accumulation. Like this had been happening for a while. Like the salt had been falling here night after night, and nobody had noticed because nobody was looking. We drove back to the port operations building in silence. Nora had collected samples of the salt. She'd taken readings with her instruments. She'd photographed the area, but neither of us knew what it meant. Salt falling from an empty sky, from a spot that matched the coordinates where the radar blip appeared. When we got back to the radar room, it was 1:23 a.m. Everything was normal. Ships moving normally. No anomalies, no frozen screens. I checked the logs. The system had recorded the 20-minute gap as continuous operation. No errors, no flags, just like the previous nights. Nora sat down with her laptop and started analyzing the data. I made coffee downstairs and brought back 2 cups. She took hers without looking up from the screen. "The EM signature was off the charts," she said. During the freeze, the magnetometer recorded field strength 30 times higher than the background. That's massive. That's the kind of reading you'd get standing next to a power substation. What could cause that? I don't know. Not naturally. There are no underwater cables in that area. No power lines. No infrastructure that would generate that kind of field. What about the salt? She pulled up an image on her laptop. A microscopic view of the salt crystals. It's sodium chloride, ocean salt. But the crystal structure is wrong. These formed under high pressure and rapid temperature change. Like they were flash evaporated and crystallized instantly. How does salt fall from the sky? If water was lifted from the ocean surface, evaporated rapidly, and the minerals crystallized in mid-air, they could fall as dry particles. But that would require intense localized heat, and we didn't feel any heat. So what are we looking at? She closed the laptop. Honestly, I don't know. But I know it's not natural, and I know it's happening on a pattern. Every 28 days, give or take. Same location, same time, same effects. You said you found 3 other incidents in the last year. Were they all at this location? 2 were. One was farther north, off Palos Verdes. But the signature was similar, radar contact, time anomaly. No physical evidence except residual EM readings. Did anyone investigate? Coast Guard checked the areas. Found nothing. The reports were filed as equipment malfunctions and closed. Nobody connected them because they were months apart and slightly different locations. But you connected them. That's what I do. I look for patterns. And this pattern is clear. Something appears off the San Pedro coast on a roughly lunar cycle. It generates massive electromagnetic fields. It distorts time. And it leaves trace evidence that most people wouldn't notice. What is it? She looked at me. I think you know what I'm going to say. I don't want to hear it. Then I won't say it. But we both know this isn't weather. It's not equipment failure. It's not a natural phenomenon. I drank my coffee. It was cold already. I'd forgotten to drink it while we were talking. What do you want to do? I want to be here next cycle. 28 days from now. I want to set up proper monitoring equipment. Cameras, EM sensors, audio recording, everything. And I want to be on that beach when it happens. I want to see what's up there. You think it's in the air? I think something is there. We just can't see it with our eyes, but the sensors can detect it. The cameras can record it. And if we get the right equipment in the right place, we might be able to capture evidence. Evidence of what? She didn't answer. She just packed up her equipment and handed me a card with her contact information. If anything else happens, call me. Anytime, day or night. I will. She left. I finished my shift alone. The rest of the night was quiet. No blips, no anomalies. Just ships and logs and coffee. When my relief came in at 6 a.m., I went home and slept until 3 p.m. When I woke up, I had a text from Nora. Salt sample analysis complete. High concentration of trace elements not found in standard seawater. Strontium isotope ratios are off. This didn't come from the local ocean. I called her. She answered on the first ring. What does that mean? I asked. It means the salt was processed, or it came from a different water source, or both. The isotope ratios don't match LA Harbor water. They don't match any regional baseline I have data for. Could it be from somewhere else? Maybe. But how did it get here? And why is it falling from the sky in the exact location where radar contacts appear? I didn't have an answer. She continued, I'm putting together a proposal to monitor the area long term. I have some grant funding for anomalous phenomena research. If I can get approval, I'll set up remote cameras and sensors. But that takes time. Weeks, maybe months. Until then, we're reliant on opportunistic observation. You mean waiting for it to happen again? Yes. 28 days, give or take. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me about other incidents she'd tracked. Strange lights off the Channel Islands, navigation system failures near Catalina, time discrepancies reported by fishing boats, all of it scattered, all of it dismissed, but all of it forming a pattern if you looked close enough. I went back to work that night expecting a normal shift. It was, and the night after, and the night after that. No blips, no time jumps, no frozen screens, just routine operations. I started to wonder if it was over, if whatever had been there had moved on. But I kept my phones charged, I kept my camera ready, and I counted the days. On November 19th, 25 days after the last incident, I got a call from Nora. I'm setting up equipment tonight, Point Fermin Beach, same spot where we found the salt. I have cameras, EM sensors, and a thermal imaging rig. If it happens again, we'll catch it. You think it's coming back? If the pattern holds, yes. Could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be 3 days from now, but I want to be ready. You need help? If you're offering. I finished my shift and met her at Point Fermin Park just after sunrise. She'd already started setting up. 3 cameras on tripods aimed at different angles. The magnetometer on a stable mount. A thermal camera aimed southwest toward the coordinates. Everything connected to a laptop running recording software. This is a lot of gear, I said. If I'm going to make a case that something unusual is happening here, I need documentation. Multiple sources, redundant data, something that can't be dismissed as a glitch or a malfunction. We finished the setup by noon. She programmed the system to start recording automatically at 10 p.m. and run until 2 a.m. That covered the window when the incidents had occurred. Now, we wait, she said. We didn't have to wait long. That night, November 19th, I was back in the radar room. My shift started at 10 p.m. At 11:14 p.m., the blip appeared. Same location, stationary. I called Nora immediately. It's here, I said. I'm at the beach. Equipment is recording. Stay on the line. I put the phone on speaker and set it beside the keyboard. I pulled up the radar display and started recording with my camera. At 11:34:07 p.m., the screen froze. This time, I was ready for the pressure. It came like before, inside my head, ears popping, vision blurring. But I stayed focused. I watched the wall clock. I counted seconds out loud. 1, 2, 3. From the phone speaker, I heard Nora's voice. Derek, something's happening. The salt is falling again. Heavy this time, and the thermal camera is picking up something. What? I don't know. A heat signature. But it's cold. The signature is colder than the surrounding air. That doesn't make sense unless the line cut out. Not disconnected. Just silent. I could see the call was still connected, but no sound came through. I tried to speak. Nora, can you hear me? Nothing. The pressure in my head increased. The lights in the radar room dimmed. The computer monitors flickered. I kept counting. 180, 181, 182. At 420 seconds, 7 minutes, the pressure released. The screen unfroze. The timestamp jumped to 11:54:22 p.m. The blip was gone. The phone line came back. I heard static, then Nora's voice. See it now? Oh my God. Derek, do you see it? See what? I'm in the radar room. I can't see anything. It's here. Right above me. I can see it on the thermal camera. It's huge. The line cut out again. This time the call disconnected. I tried calling back. It went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times. Same result. I looked at the radar. Nothing showed up at the coordinates. No blip, no return. But I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Nora was down there. Alone. With equipment running. And something was happening. I called Harbor Patrol. This is Port Ops. I need a unit dispatched to Point Fairman Beach. Possible emergency. Researcher in distress. What's the nature of the emergency? I lost contact with her. She was conducting research on the beach and her phone cut out. Is she injured? I don't know. I just need someone to check on her. Copy. We'll send a unit. I tried Nora's number again. Voicemail. I left the radar room and ran down to the parking lot. I got in my car and drove toward Point Fairman. It was only 3 miles, but it felt like 30. I kept trying her number. No answer. When I reached the park, I saw the Harbor Patrol truck already there. 2 officers standing near Nora's car. I parked and ran over. Is she okay? I asked. One of the officers turned. It was Reyes. You Derek Lang? Yeah. She's fine. Shaken up, but fine. She's down on the beach collecting her equipment. What happened? She says she saw something. We checked the area. Nothing there now. But her equipment recorded something. She's pretty insistent we look at it. I followed them down the trail to the beach. Nora was there, packing up cameras and sensors. Her hands were shaking, but she was moving with purpose. When she saw me, she waved me over. Did you get it? I asked. I got it, all of it, the thermal signature, the EM spike, the salt fall, everything. What did you see? She looked at me. Her eyes were wide. I saw it. I can't explain it. But I saw it, and so did the cameras. We packed up the equipment and carried it to her car. The Harbor Patrol officers helped. Reyes asked if she wanted to file a report. She said yes. He took her statement right there in the parking lot. She told him about the research, about the pattern, about the equipment, about what she'd seen. He wrote it all down. When she finished, he said, "Ma'am, I'm going to be honest. This sounds unusual, but without physical evidence or a clear safety concern, there's not much we can do. I'll file the report. If you want to continue your research, that's your call. But be careful." "I will." He left. Nora and I sat in her car with the heater running and watched the sun come up over the port. She pulled out her laptop and connected the thermal camera. "You ready to see this?" she asked. "Yeah." She played the recording. The first few minutes showed the normal beach. Rocks, water, fog. The thermal view showed temperature gradients, warmer water, cooler air, normal patterns. At 11:34, everything changed. A massive, cold signature appeared in the sky. Not a spot, a shape, irregular, maybe 50 feet across, It hung there, perfectly still, about 100 feet above the water. The temperature reading was -20 degrees Celsius, colder than anything in the environment, colder than the air, colder than the water, like a hole in the thermal view. And around the edges of the shape, the air was distorted, rippling, like heat shimmer but inverted. Cold shimmer, the salt was falling from it, streams of particles pouring down from the bottom of the cold signature. The shape stayed for the full 20 minutes of frozen time. Then it faded, not quickly, gradually. Over the course of 30 seconds, it went from solid to faint to gone. And when it disappeared, the salt stopped falling. "What is that?" I asked. "I don't know, but it's real. The camera caught it. The sensors confirmed it. This isn't a glitch. This isn't equipment failure. Something was there." We sat in silence. The sun was higher now. The park was starting to fill with early morning joggers and dog walkers, normal people doing normal things, unaware that something impossible had been hanging in the air above the beach just hours before. "What are you going to do with this?" I asked. "I'm going to analyze it, write it up, submit it to journals, present it at conferences. This is exactly the kind of data I've been looking for." "You think people will believe you? Some will, some won't. But the data is solid. That's what matters." I drove back to my apartment. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed around 10 a.m. Text from my supervisor. "Need to see you. Come in early." I got to the port operations building at 2 p.m. My supervisor was waiting in his office. He looked tired. "Derek, sit down." I sat. "I got a call this morning from Caltech, a researcher named Nora Green. She says you've been helping her with a project." "Yeah. She also says you left your post last night, during your shift." "There was an emergency. I called Harbor Patrol. They responded." "That's not the point. You left your post without authorization. That's grounds for disciplinary action." "I understand." He sighed. "Look, I like you. You're a good worker, reliable. But this thing you're doing with her, it's causing problems. The Coast Guard is asking questions. It is asking questions. People are starting to think our systems are unreliable. The systems are fine. This isn't about equipment failure. This is, I don't care what it is. I care about keeping this port running smoothly. And that means no drama, no unexplained incidents, no researchers camping out on our beaches with cameras. So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying drop it. Stop helping her. Stop filing reports about blips and time jumps. Just do your job and let this go." "And if I don't? Then we'll have to reevaluate your position here." I stood up. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long." I left his office. I went home. I sat on my couch and thought about what he'd said. I thought about my job, about the paycheck, about the 11 years I'd put into this work. And I thought about that cold signature on the thermal camera, about the salt falling from nothing, about the time that jumped forward while I counted seconds. I pulled out my phone and called Nora. "I'm out," I said. "My supervisor told me to drop it. If I keep going, I'll lose my job." There was a long pause. "I understand. But I want you to keep going. Whatever this is, someone needs to document it. Someone needs to pay attention. I will, I promise. And if you find anything that needs a second witness, call me. I don't care what my supervisor says." "Thank you, Derek." We hung up. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. I wrote down everything that had happened. The 3 nights, the blip, the time jumps, the beach, the salt, the thermal signature, all of it. I saved it to 3 different locations: cloud storage, external drive, email draft. I wasn't going to let this disappear. I wasn't going to let it get buried in closed incident reports and dismissed equipment malfunctions. Whatever was appearing off San Pedro, it was real. And now there was a record. I kept my head down at work. I showed up, I did my job, I logged ships and watched the screen and didn't ask questions. When the radar showed anything unusual, I logged it and moved on. I didn't call Nora. I didn't file reports. I stayed quiet, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every shift I watched that spot 15 miles southwest of Point Fermin. I watched for the blip. I watched the clock. And when 11:34 p.m. approached, I felt my chest tighten. Waiting. Anticipating, nothing happened. Days turned into weeks. November became December. The cycle passed without incident. No blips, no time jumps, no frozen screens, just normal operations. I started to wonder if it was over, if whatever had been there had moved on, or if my supervisor's warning had somehow made it stop. That was irrational thinking, and I knew it. But part of me wanted it to be true. Part of me wanted to believe I could just forget about it and move on. On December 15th, I got an email from Nora. The subject line was published. The body of the email contained a link to a research paper. Temporal and electromagnetic anomalies associated with unidentified aerial phenomena. A case study from the San Pedro Channel. I opened the link. The paper was dense, technical, full of graphs and data tables and thermal images. But the conclusion was clear. Something anomalous had appeared multiple times in the same location. The phenomena generated measurable electromagnetic fields, deposited trace materials, and created temporal distortions affecting both electronic equipment and human perception. The paper included my radar logs, the photos I'd taken, the video with the time jump. All of it anonymized. My name wasn't mentioned. Neither was the port of Los Angeles. But anyone who knew the area would recognize the coordinates. I read the whole thing. Then I read it again. It was careful, conservative. It didn't make claims it couldn't support. It didn't use words like UFO or extraterrestrial. It just presented the data and asked questions. What could cause these effects? What was the source? What was the mechanism? The comments section at the bottom of the paper was already filling up. Some supportive, some skeptical, some dismissive. But people were reading it. People were engaging with it. That was something. I replied to Nora's email. "Good work, you did it justice." She replied within minutes. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your help. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. But you were there. You witnessed it. That matters." We didn't exchange any more emails after that. I knew she was monitoring the area. I knew she was waiting for the next cycle. But I couldn't be part of it. Not officially, not with my job on the line. On December 18th, 29 days after the last incident, I was working my shift when the blip appeared. Same location, same signature. My heart rate jumped. I took a breath. I logged it as unidentified contact and didn't call anyone. I just watched. At 11:34:07 p.m., the screen froze. The pressure came. Ears popping. Vision blurring. I counted seconds. I got to 4:20 before it unfroze. The timestamp jumped. 11:54:22 p.m. The blip was gone. I pulled out my personal phone and texted Nora. It happened again. She replied immediately. "I know, I was monitoring, got everything on camera. Same signature, identical, cold thermal anomaly, EM spike, salt deposition, everything." I finished my shift without incident. The next night, I did the same. The night after that, the same. The pattern held. Every 28 to 30 days, the phenomena appeared. Same location, same time, same effects. I stopped counting cycles after the sixth one. It became routine in a strange way. I knew it was coming. I knew what to expect. and I knew Nora was documenting it. That was enough for me. In March, she published a follow-up paper. This one included data from multiple cycles, temperature profiles, EM field measurements, spectral analysis of the deposited salt. The evidence was overwhelming. Something was appearing in that location on a regular schedule, something that defied conventional explanation. The paper got more attention than the first. News outlets picked it up. Not mainstream media, but science blogs, fringe websites, the kind of places that take this stuff seriously. Nora started getting interview requests. She turned most of them down. She didn't want to be labeled a UFO chaser. She just wanted to study the phenomena and present the data. I stayed out of it. I kept working. I kept watching the radar. And every time the blip appeared, I documented it quietly. Photos on my phone, notes in a private log. Nothing official. Nothing that would get back to my supervisor. In June, I got a visitor at work. Not Nora. Someone else. A man in a dark suit. He showed me credentials. Department of Defense, Naval Intelligence. He didn't give me a name. Mr. Lang. I'd like to ask you some questions about the radar contacts you've observed. I looked at him. I've already filed incident reports. They're on record. I've read the reports. I want to hear it from you, in your own words. We went to a conference room. He pulled out a recording device and set it on the table. Do you consent to this conversation being recorded? Am I in trouble? No, this is informational only. We're gathering data on unexplained maritime phenomena. Your observations are valuable. Then yes, I consent. He pressed record. Describe the first incident, October 23rd of last year. I told him everything. The blip, the time jump, the frozen screen. He didn't interrupt. He just listened and took notes. When I finished, he asked about the other incidents. I described those too, all of them. The pattern, the regularity, the consistency. When I was done, he turned off the recorder. Have you shared this information with anyone outside official channels? I thought about lying, but what was the point? I helped a researcher from Caltech, Nora Green. She was studying the phenomena. I'm aware. We've spoken to Dr. Green. Her work is thorough. Is she in trouble? No, like you, she's been cooperative. We appreciate that. What is this? What's happening out there? He packed up his recorder. I can't discuss ongoing investigations, but I can tell you that you're not the only one who's observed these phenomena. There are similar reports up and down the coast. Different locations. Similar signatures. We're working to understand them. And when you do understand them, will you tell anyone? He stood. That's above my pay grade. Thank you for your time, Mr. Lang. He left. I sat in the conference room for a long time after he was gone. The DoD was involved. Naval Intelligence was involved. That meant this was bigger than I'd thought. Bigger than just our stretch of coast. This was widespread, and someone official was paying attention. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. That evening, I called Nora. I had a visitor today, DoD, Naval Intelligence. Did they contact you too? Last week. They asked about my research, wanted copies of all my data. I gave it to them. What do you think it means? It means they're taking it seriously. Whether they'll ever tell the public what they find is another question. Do you think they know what it is? Maybe. Or maybe they're as confused as we are. Either way, it's out of our hands now. Does that bother you? A little, but I did what I set out to do. I documented it. I published the data. It's on the record now. That's all I can do. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me she was moving on to other projects. Still anomalous phenomena, but different locations, different questions. She'd spent 18 months studying the San Pedro site. She'd done what she could. "What about you?" she asked. "You going to keep watching?" "I don't have much choice, it's my job." "But are you going to keep documenting it?" I thought about that. Yeah, I am. Even if nobody looks at it, even if it just sits in a file somewhere, someone should be keeping a record. Good, because this isn't going to stop. Whatever this is, it's been happening for a long time, and it's going to keep happening. She was right. The phenomena continued. Every cycle, like clockwork. I documented each one, date, time, duration, EM readings if Nora's equipment was still running. After she moved on to other projects, I started bringing my own magnetometer to work. A cheap one I bought online. It wasn't as sophisticated as hers, but it picked up the EM spikes. I kept a spreadsheet. 32 incidents documented over 18 months. The pattern was consistent. The cycle averaged 28.3 days. The location varied slightly, within a half-mile radius, but always centered on the same general coordinates. The duration was always 20 minutes of perceived time compressed into 7 minutes of real time. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what was causing it, but I knew it was real, and I knew someone needed to keep watching. In September, almost a year after my conversation with the Naval Intelligence Officer, I got another visitor. This time it was a group. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, civilian clothes, no badges, no credentials offered. "Mr. Lang, we're conducting follow-up interviews on the San Pedro incidents. Do you have a few minutes?" I looked at them. Something felt off. "Who are you with?" "We're contractors, working with the DoD. We'd like to ask you some questions." I already gave a statement. It's on record. "We have some additional questions. New information has come to light." I hesitated. "Can we do this during my break? I'm on shift." "Of course." We went to the break room. They didn't set up a recorder, they just pulled out notebooks. The woman did most of the talking. "Mr. Lang, have you noticed any changes in the phenomena over the last few months?" "What kind of changes?" "Frequency, duration, location, any variations from the established pattern." I thought about it. No, it's been consistent. Same pattern, same timing. "Have you experienced any personal effects? Health issues, sleep disturbances, memory problems? Some headaches, but nothing serious." "When did the headaches start?" "A few months after the first incident." "Do they correlate with the phenomena cycles?" I hadn't thought about that, but now that she mentioned it, yeah. "They get worse around the time the blip appears." She wrote that down. "Have you noticed anyone else experiencing similar symptoms?" "No, I work alone most nights." "What about Dr. Green? Did she report any symptoms?" "You'd have to ask her." The woman nodded. "We have. She mentioned headaches as well, and some auditory disturbances, ringing in the ears, high-pitched tones." I felt a chill. I'd been getting that too. I'd assumed it was age, hearing loss from years of working near loud equipment. But now I wasn't sure. "Is there something we should be concerned about?" I asked. "We're just gathering information. As a precaution, we recommend regular medical checkups. If you experience any unusual symptoms, document them. Let your doctor know." They asked a few more questions, then they left. I went back to the radar room, feeling uneasy. They'd said they were contractors, but they hadn't said who they were contracting for. And they'd asked very specific questions about health effects. That night, I couldn't focus on the screens. I kept replaying the conversation. The way the woman had asked about memory problems. The way she'd mentioned Dr. Green's symptoms before I'd confirmed my own. They knew more than they were saying. They were testing me. Seeing if I'd volunteer information or if they'd have to pull it out of me. I started keeping a health log. Nothing fancy. Just a notebook where I wrote down symptoms and when they occurred. Headache severity on a scale of 1 to 10. Duration. Whether they coincided with the phenomena cycles. The ringing in my ears. How long it lasted. What triggered it. The pattern became clear within 2 weeks. The headaches spiked 48 hours before each cycle. They'd start as a dull pressure behind my eyes and build until the night of the incident. During the 20-minute freeze, the pain was intense. A sharp stabbing sensation that made it hard to think. Then, as soon as the screen unfroze, the pain would drop to manageable levels. Not gone, just less. The ringing was constant now, a high-pitched tone that sat just at the edge of hearing. Most of the time I could ignore it, but in quiet moments, driving home, lying in bed, sitting alone in the radar room, it became all I could hear. I went to a doctor in early October, told him about the headaches and the tinnitus. He ran tests. Hearing test came back normal, no significant loss. Blood work was fine. Blood pressure slightly elevated but nothing alarming. He suggested stress. Recommended I take time off, maybe see a therapist. I didn't tell him about the phenomena. I didn't tell him about the time jumps or the frozen screens or the electromagnetic spikes. I just nodded and took the prescription for migraine medication he offered. I never filled it. 2 weeks later, on October 14th, exactly 2 years after the first incident, something changed. The blip appeared as expected. Same location, same stationary signature. I logged it. I called Harbor Patrol out of habit even though I knew they'd find nothing. I prepared for the freeze. At 11:34:07 p.m. the screen froze. But this time, something else happened. The lights in the radar room didn't just dim. They went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in. Red LEDs casting the room in a crimson glow. My computer monitors stayed on, powered by the UPS backup. But everything else, the overhead lights, the coffee maker, the small desk lamp, all dead. The pressure in my head was worse than it had ever been. I felt my nose start to bleed. I grabbed a tissue and pressed it to my face. The blood was dark, almost black in the red emergency light. I tasted metal, copper and salt and something else, something chemical. I looked at the wall clock. It had stopped. The second hand frozen between the 4 and the 5. I pulled out my phone to check the time. The screen wouldn't turn on. Dead. Just like during the previous incidents. But this time I'd come prepared. I had a mechanical watch. An old wind-up my grandfather had given me. I checked it. The hands were spinning, not ticking. Spinning, clockwise, fast, like someone had hit fast forward. I watched the minute hand complete a full rotation in about 10 seconds. Then another. The watch was measuring time, but time wasn't passing normally. Or I wasn't experiencing it normally. I couldn't tell which. The radar screen stayed frozen. 11:34:07 p.m. I counted my heartbeats instead of seconds. Slow counts. 1, 2, 3. I got to 420 before the pressure released. The lights came back on. The wall clock started ticking again. My phone screen lit up showing a battery warning, and the radar timestamp jumped to 11:54:22 p.m. 20 minutes, always 20 minutes. But my mechanical watch showed something different. It had advanced 47 minutes. Not 20, not 7, 47. Like time had fractured into different streams and I'd experienced some combination of all of them. I wrote it down immediately. Every detail. The power failure, the nosebleed, the spinning watch hands, the discrepancy between the radar time jump and the watch time jump. I photographed the watch face. I photographed the tissue with the dark blood. I documented everything. When my shift ended, I didn't go home. I drove to Point Fermin Beach. The sun was just starting to rise. early morning light turning the fog orange and pink. I walked down to the spot where Nora had set up her equipment 2 years ago. The rocks were covered in a thin white crust, salt, accumulated over months of repeated deposition. Nobody had noticed because nobody was looking. Nobody came to this exact spot at dawn after a phenomena cycle to check for physical evidence. I scraped some of the salt into a plastic bag. I took photos of the accumulation pattern. It wasn't random, it formed concentric circles, like ripples from a stone dropped in water, but frozen, permanent, left behind by something that had been hovering invisibly overhead for 2 years. I called Nora from the beach. It was early, but she answered. "It's getting worse," I said. "What do you mean?" I told her about the power failure, about the nosebleed, about the watch spinning through 47 minutes while the radar only jumped 20. She was quiet for a long time. "Derek, you need to get away from there. Take a leave of absence. Let someone else monitor it." "There is no one else." "Then let it go unmonitored. Your health is more important than data collection." "Is it though? What if this thing escalates? What if the next cycle is stronger? What if it starts affecting more people and nobody's watching?" "That's not your responsibility." "Then whose is it? The DOD? They're just collecting data and filing it away. Nobody's warning people. Nobody's putting up signs or restricting access to the area. People sail through that spot every day, and they have no idea what's there." She sighed. "You can't save everyone, Derek. You can barely save yourself right now." She was right. I knew she was right, but I couldn't stop. The phenomena had become part of my life, part of my routine, part of who I was. I was the guy who watched the screen and counted the cycles and documented the impossible. If I walked away, who would I be? Over the next 3 cycles, the symptoms got worse. The headaches lasted longer. The nosebleeds became regular. I started losing chunks of time even when the phenomena wasn't active. I'd be driving home, and suddenly I'd be in my apartment with no memory of the drive. I'd be eating dinner, and the next moment the plate would be empty, and an hour would have passed. My supervisor noticed. He pulled me aside in late November. "Derek, you look terrible. When's the last time you took a vacation?" "I don't know. A few years." "Take some time off. A week, 2 weeks. You've got the time accrued." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're making mistakes. Small ones, but mistakes. You logged the same ship twice last week. You missed a harbor patrol check-in. This isn't like you." "I'll be more careful." "I'm not asking. Take a week off, starting Monday. That's an order." I wanted to argue, but I was too tired. "Okay." I took the week off. I stayed in my apartment. I slept. I tried to eat regularly. I avoided looking at the ocean. But I couldn't stop thinking about the cycles, about what was happening out there while I wasn't watching, about whether the phenomena would appear on schedule, or if my absence would somehow change the pattern. On the night the cycle should have occurred, I couldn't stay away. I drove to Point Fairman Beach. I didn't bring equipment. I just stood on the rocks and waited. At 11:34 p.m. I felt it. The pressure. The metallic taste. The sense that time was bending around me. I looked up at the empty sky and knew it was there. Invisible, silent, hovering. Salt began to fall. Gentle at first, then heavier. It accumulated on my jacket, in my hair, on my upturned face. I opened my mouth and tasted it. Ocean salt, but wrong. The flavor was off, too bitter, too mineral, like it had been processed through something that changed its fundamental nature. I don't know how long I stood there. My watch showed 23 minutes had passed when the pressure released, but it felt like hours. Like I'd been standing on that beach for an entire night compressed into 23 minutes. When I got back to my apartment, I looked in the mirror. My nose had bled again without me noticing. Dried blood streaked down to my chin. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin looked gray. I looked like someone who'd been standing too close to something they shouldn't have been near. I went back to work the following Monday. My supervisor asked if I felt better. I lied and said yes. He seemed relieved. He didn't want to deal with whatever was wrong with me. None of them did. They just wanted the radar room staffed and the logs filed and no problems that required paperwork or explanations. The cycles continued. December, January, February. Each one taking a little more out of me. Each one leaving me a little less certain of where I ended and the phenomena began. I started to feel like I was synced to it. Like my body was running on the same 28-day cycle. Like I was becoming part of the pattern. I pulled out my phone and searched for Nora's latest paper. I found it. Long-term physiological effects of proximity to temporal electromagnetic anomalies, a preliminary study. Published 2 months ago. I read it. The paper documented health effects reported by people who'd been near the San Pedro phenomena. Headaches, tinnitus, sleep disturbances, short-term memory issues. Nothing severe, nothing permanent, but consistent across multiple subjects. I was one of those subjects. My data was in there, anonymized, but I recognized the details. There was a footnote I hadn't noticed before, a reference to similar cases from other coastal sites, Palos Verdes, Santa Monica, Oxnard, even up north near Monterey. The same health profiles, the same progression, early symptoms appearing within weeks of first exposure, worsening with each subsequent cycle. And in 3 documented cases, subjects had experienced what Nora called temporal dissociation events, moments where they lost significant chunks of time, sometimes hours, with no memory of what occurred. I'd had one of those. Just last week. I'd been at work, running through the routine logs, and then I was in my car in the parking lot. My shift was over. 6 hours had passed. I had no memory of the end of my shift, of shutting down the systems, of walking to my car. Just a blank space where time should have been. I'd convinced myself I was tired. Autopilot. But reading Nora's footnote, I realized it was something else. The phenomena wasn't just affecting me during the 20-minute windows. It was bleeding into the rest of my life, changing how my brain processed time, making me lose my grip on the fundamental experience of continuous existence. I called Nora. "Did you have visitors today? 3 people. Contractors. Yesterday. How did you know?" "They just left my office. They were asking about health effects." "Yeah. They're concerned. Apparently, there have been similar reports from other locations. People experiencing symptoms after repeated exposure. Is it dangerous?" "I don't think so. The effects seem to be temporary, but they want to monitor it. Make sure it's not cumulative." I paused. What if it is cumulative? What if the more cycles you witness, the worse it gets? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was careful. "That's what they're trying to determine." "Derek, how many cycles have you documented now?" I did the math. 43, 44 if you count the one coming up in 3 days. That's more than anyone else, more than me, more than the fishing boat captains or the Coast Guard personnel who've encountered it. You've been exposed more than anyone we know of. And I don't know what that means, but those contractors weren't just gathering information. They were assessing you, looking for signs of deterioration. The word hung in the air. Deterioration. Like I was a piece of equipment breaking down under stress. Like the phenomena was wearing me away one cycle at a time. "What should I do?" I asked. "Stop watching. Request a transfer. Move to a different shift. Let someone else take over." There is no one else. Nobody else knows what to look for. Nobody else cares enough to document it. then maybe it doesn't need to be documented anymore. We have 2 years of data. We have thermal images, EM readings, salt samples, time measurements. We've proven it exists. That's enough. But it wasn't enough, not for me, because proving it existed wasn't the same as understanding it, and I needed to understand. I needed to know why it appeared in that exact location, why it followed a lunar cycle, why it generated cold signatures and deposited salt and bent time into impossible shapes. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to keep watching. "I can't stop," I said. Nora was quiet for a long moment. "Then be careful. Document everything. Your symptoms, your time gaps, everything. Because if this thing is changing you, someone needs to know how." We hung up. Did they say what they think is causing it? No, they just said they're investigating. I hung up and stared at the radar screen. I'd been doing this for almost 2 years now. Watching, documenting, exposing myself to whatever EM fields the phenomena generated. And now someone was concerned enough about health effects to send contractors to interview witnesses. I should have been scared. I should have asked for a transfer, found a different job, gotten away from it. But I didn't. I kept watching, because someone needed to. Because if I walked away, who would document the next cycle? Who would keep the record? It's October now, almost 2 years since the first incident. I'm still working the radar room, still watching that spot 15 miles southwest of Point Fairman. The phenomena still appears. Every cycle, like clockwork. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why it appears in that specific location at that specific interval. But I know it's real. I know it's measurable. And I know someone is paying attention even if they're not telling the rest of us what they've found. I'm writing this down because I need to get it out. Because the headaches are getting worse. Because the ringing in my ears doesn't stop anymore. Because I'm starting to lose time even when I'm not near the phenomena. Little gaps. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Moments where I can't account for what I was doing. Nora says it's stress. She says I should take a break. Step away for a few cycles, let someone else watch. But there is no one else. There's just me and the radar screen and the blip that appears every 28 days. So I keep watching. I keep documenting. I keep counting seconds while the world jumps forward around me. And I keep hoping that someday someone will figure out what this is, where it comes from, what it wants. Until then, I'm the guy in the radar room, watching the screen, waiting for 11:34, waiting for the freeze, waiting for the pressure in my head and the taste of metal in my mouth and the feeling that time is slipping away while I'm standing still. This is my record. This is what I saw. This is what's still happening. Every 28 days. Off the coast of San Pedro, in a spot that shows up on radar and thermal cameras and magnetometers but nowhere else. If you work maritime radar along the California coast, watch for stationary contacts that don't have transponders. Watch for time anomalies. Watch for EM spikes that don't have a source. And if you find them, document it. Write it down. Save it somewhere safe. Because someone needs to keep the record. Someone needs to pay attention. Even if it costs us sleep. Even if it costs us our health. Even if nobody believes us. I'm still here. Still watching. Still waiting for the next cycle. And when it comes, I'll be ready.